everybody's having fun.
All right, everybody. I know you're all excited to be out of your house finally after the snow, and the first place you want to go is a city council meeting. So thank you for that. If you could just take a moment and silence your cell phones, and then please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any proclamations on tonight, but I wanted to make a few announcements. First of all, this is our first city council meeting with our brand new city manager, Deborah Campbell. Everybody welcome Deborah Campbell. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who, once again, Kathy Ball sitting in the audience, who stood in as interim, and everyone else who shifted up and around to be able to manage our vacancies and now sort of settling back in where they were. And anyway, so this is a very exciting night for Deborah's first night. Another item I'd like to mention, I want to thank all of the city staff that worked so hard on dealing with Snowmageddon. I know a lot of the administration and a lot of people in public works and public safety pulled some long hours to make everything work right. Everything from communications to getting roads cleared. I saw a lot of positive feedback online. People really appreciative of how quickly the roads got cleared. So I want to thank everyone for working so hard on that. Somebody asked me though the other day, how many snow plows does the city have? How many snow plows? I know we have 32 vehicles that were used for snow clearing, but I don't know how many actual non-retrofitted snow plows we have, but we will find the answer to this. Oh, you know?
Greg?
I think we have 30.
30. All right. Okay.
So what are the other two?
Yeah, well, somebody's truck with a... Anyway.
Filled with shovels.
All right, well, also I wanted to mention that we had an officer that was seriously injured in an accident. That accident happened before the snowstorm in an on-duty event, and we want to think about that officer who is recovering and has a long road to full recovery here. And just this is an opportunity to think about how dangerous that line of duty can be from time to time, and how we're thinking about that city police officer and their family. So we're hoping he recovers well and is back in action as soon as possible. Also, let's see, I think, one other item is that item B on our public hearings calendar, which is the proposed 56-room hotel on Biltmore Avenue. There is a desire on behalf of the applicant to continue that item to March 26th. So it will not be heard tonight. So if you're here for that item, I just want to let you know now that item will not be heard tonight. We'll do a motion when we get to the public hearing portion of the agenda. Okay. All right. So we are ready for the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda?
Mayor, you might know that consent K is now an amendment to the lease agreement. I believe council has copies of that.
Yes. So item K, which is the lease agreement with the DeWine Seed Silver Dollar Baseball LLC, otherwise known as the Asheville Tourists, is actually an amendment to that lease, not a new lease. All right.
How does it amend it? It amends it.
It extends it.
It
for 6
extends
months.
it.
Extends it
and
for 10 years.
Keith can hand you, he's got a sheet.
For 6 months.
Oh, for 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. If there's anyone wishing to comment on the consent agenda, please raise your hand. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Anybody? All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have several presentations and reports. The first, which is not on the printed agenda, but is jumping in here, is Chief Burnett. He's now Chief Burnett once again, back from being interim city manager.
He was
This is
always
on
chief.
storm response. He was always chief to us, that's right.
And Mayor, if I could, while the chief is getting ready to make the presentation, I also wanted to go on record of thanking city staff, particularly since this was my first week on the job. I'm so glad that they performed exceptionally, and I think that this is probably typical. This isn't atypical of this staff, so I appreciate that. And secondly, want to thank the community, because I think that they pitched in and heeded all of the warnings that the sheriff and the police and public works department was asking them to stay off the roads and don't park in the streets, so that we were able to do our job effectively and I think efficiently. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank the media and the county for joining us at a press conference that we held on Saturday. So I know that press conference probably wasn't typical, but it wasn't a typical storm either. So thank you very much for that opportunity, Mayor.
Thank you. Folks who are standing in the back, we have a couple of seats up here. I don't know if it's probably a little hard to see them. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Scott Burnett, Fire Chief.
Your uniform still fits, I think.
It does, barely, but it does. So, thank you for this opportunity to give you a very brief update on the snowstorm activities in the city of Asheville over the weekend. So this storm certainly, as Ms. Campbell indicated, was not a typical storm. It was a dangerous storm. It was a severe storm. We were blessed here in Asheville that we had no loss of life, but some other communities in North Carolina weren't as fortunate. So this was a very significant, serious, dangerous storm. To welcome our brand new city manager, we welcomed her with a West North Carolina snowstorm. So, but what she brought with her is tremendous leadership and innovation. And we'll talk through some of the successes that we had through this storm. The public safety call volume doubled, which is not unusual for a snowstorm of this magnitude. One thing to note, and Ms. Campbell already spoke to this a little bit, is we had 47 vehicle collisions over the period of the snowfall. That's less. That's significantly less than we would have on a normal day with clear weather. We had 60% of the vehicle collisions that normally we would have, and I really think that is a direct correlation with the press conference that was held, the information that was shared by our Cape Department, our partners with the media, spreading that information, and the strong collaboration with the county and the state to get that message out. And that certainly made a huge difference in so many levels. As I stated, we had no storm deaths, fortunately, here in Asheville. We did have one storm-related employee injury, which was a minor injury. Public Works treated 503 miles on 1,637 roads. They did this by working 24 hours a day, 2 shifts, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. They also treated and cleaned 15 miles of sidewalks. Something new and innovative that our Public Works Director, Greg Schuler, had his staff do this year was a new calcium chloride salt brine solution, the pre-treatment of roads and sidewalks, and that certainly seemed to make a difference in snow removal during this event. They're also able to keep those plows on the road due to our General Services Department, our fleet. They were also worked 24 hours a day. 12 hours on, 12 hours off. As soon as one of those plows that the mayor referenced would go down, the fleet was right there to get back up on the road, which made a really big difference. Our technology, our ITS department helped tremendously. Some time ago, we made a significant change in technology in our city, and it really paid significant benefits to allow us to make better decisions with better information. The Google Groups, Google Hangouts, we were able to do real-time situation reports, which in the past, as council knows, you would get those statically. Well, we were able to, at any given time, have a real-time situation report of everything that was going on in the city for all of the city employees that were working. The AVL alerts, it was the first time that we were able to inform all of our employees of everything that was going on as far as staffing, closures, when to report to work. That was tested late last week and worked very effectively. Our transit app for the community, we felt that had a really good impact on our transit riders, knowing the impacts that the storm had for our transit system so that they would not be waiting out in the snow for a bus that wasn't going to show up. Our Everbridge system also is a tremendous way to inform the community of different things that were going on. Our snow mapper was viewed over 14,000 times in our community, so that was a significant use of that technology to pass on that information to our community. As Ms. Campbell stated, we collaborated with the county to have our new sheriff, county officials, Mr. Vihan, members of city staff, and Ms. Campbell kicked off the press conference by allowing all of the community to know beforehand how serious this storm was going to be and how important it was to stay at home and different safety recommendations. That was a huge difference that we did this year, and it certainly had very much a positive effect. The community reaction, the social media, we were able to communicate with residents in real time. We got a very positive reaction from members of the community through our social media. This one video that was posted on our website was viewed 1,800 times, the one video. Here's some examples. Hats off to all involved in the amazing handling of this storm. Great job. Burger Works, gave us a shout out. Thanks for all you do. Nice job with this storm. We had many examples of those. Even on social media sites, not our own website, but just independent social media sites, there was a lot of positive comments from the community about the streets being cleared and the storm response. So in summary, our preparation, the coordination, strong coordination, our partners with the county, Red Cross, other nonprofits, the media, our communication, and all of the city staff that worked 24/7 throughout the entire storm certainly made an impact, and fortunately could have been a much worse situation for our community. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll just note from my personal observation is that more roads were cleared in West Asheville than are normally cleared, including the road that my little street goes out onto. And I was floored as we walked around on, I guess it was Monday morning, at how many of the really smaller streets in West Asheville that don't usually get plowed were plowed. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have several presentations tonight, so everyone just settle in. Our next one is Art Space Affordable Housing Project Update, and Steph Munzendahl is listed on my agenda, but I know there's several people here who are a part of this. I don't see Steph unless she's like, oh, here she is. Ooh, I'm starting to get nervous.
Me and you both.
If you want to bring anybody up.
Yeah, I'm going to bring some folks up here. There's a whole crew. But my name is Stephanie Munzendahl. I'm serving as the Interim Assistant Planning Director for the City of Asheville right now. You're going to hear an update on a project where the city was a collaborative partner. We were one of the funders for this project. And Mike Marcus from the Center for Craft, Creativity, and Design is going to tell you all about it. Thank you. And I'm here for any questions afterwards.
Thank you, and good evening. I'm also joined by Elizabeth Brazis of the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina.
Just blocking
You trying
her out.
to dance with her?
I wrote paper.
I did too.
Okay, but we have to advance that for them.
Yep.
Just hit return or something.
He's on it. Thanks, Steph, for that introduction, and thank you, Mayor Mannheimer and Council, for this opportunity and for your commitment to date, both to this project and to the issue of affordable housing for Asheville. This effort began with the Center for Craft and the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce seeking data on housing and other space needs for our creative sector.
Okay, grab that mic and get
Closer
it,
to
get
you,
it, yeah. There's a lot of people watching on TV.
This mic?
Grab them both.
Mike and I are here this evening to share details about the project and to discuss next steps. ArtSpace is the leading nonprofit developer of live-work artist housing, artist studios, arts centers, and arts-friendly businesses in the United States. And they are extremely particular about where they choose to invest their time and potentially develop a project. Apparently, they too read many of the top 10 lists that featured Asheville and recognized it as the unique creative environment we all know and love. Our affordable housing needs and the thriving creative sector made them a natural partner for this. Mike is now going to share with you some very specifics about the project.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Council. As Elizabeth mentioned, I am Mike Marcus of the Center for Craft, and I was the project manager on this project for the last 3 years. The center is deeply grateful for the project's incredible community support, as demonstrated by our partners on this slide. We began this journey in November 2015 with Kit Kramer of the Asheville Chamber, knowing that the data gathered for such a project would benefit numerous community stakeholders and thousands of artists and creatives. This is the first project of its nature for Asheville's creative sector. A truly collaborative project from the beginning, 10 organizations and funders came together to fund a two-part engagement with ArtSpace that encompassed a feasibility study and an arts market survey. Hundreds of hours in staff time by the Center for Craft, the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina, the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce, and the City of Asheville add to a process that carried a hard cost of more than $119,000. The city generously contributed $25,000 to the process and has been a critically important project partner, so thank you. The project leadership group was developed following the direction of ArtSpace and was established to help shepherd the project forward. Several funders dedicated staff to serve on the leadership group, and other members were added based on suggestions from ArtSpace. Many other community leaders were engaged in ad hoc ways through presentations, focus groups, and one-on-one meetings. Since November 2015, the project has had 3 steps which are based on ArtSpace's proven due diligence method: project initiation and fundraising, the preliminary feasibility study and report, and most recently, the arts market survey and market study. We are now at the critical juncture of deciding how to move forward with the compelling data that's been collected through phases 1 and 2. The next step would be to enter into an agreement with ArtSpace for project design and pre-construction services. Utilizing ArtSpace's model, stakeholders were engaged in different ways through each phase. Phase 1 centered on cross-sector focus groups and an assessment of Asheville's creative sector housing needs. This included site visits to 10 potential project locations, many of which were city-owned properties. Phase 2 built on the outcomes of Phase 1 and further developed the specifics of whether or not a new affordable housing space for the creative community was viable. A key step of Phase 1 was assessing potential sites. Several of the properties visited were city-owned and already earmarked for affordable housing efforts. Phase 1 identified 91 Riverside Drive, or the Ice House, as the priority site for this project by ArtSpace using their site selection matrix and scoring criteria. The property rankings centered on the presumed demand for an 80-unit affordable artist housing mixed-use project, which was then tested using the arts market survey. And Phase 2 later affirmed this site as the top choice for survey respondents. 80% of respondents identified the River Arts District as their first preference for a location, followed by West Asheville. And the specifics on that are provided on page 22 of the technical report that's attached to the final report that you all should have received. And it's available on keepavlcreative.com for anyone in the public. And I will just mention on this slide, to the right is a project that was developed in a floodplain in Santa Cruz, California by ArtSpace. And so they have experience developing in the conditions that we're looking at. Phase 2 included 2 surveys to assess the interest in a new affordable space in Asheville and related space preferences of the local and regional creative sector. The surveys were open for 9 weeks utilizing press, social media, and online platforms, as well as printed materials to spread the word and garner inclusive and statistically relevant responses for those identifying as part of the creative sector. The result was 1,435 collected surveys. ArtSpace was blown away by this response rate and provided this quote: "The Arts Market Survey is a critical step in the feasibility phase of an affordable artist housing mixed-use project designed to serve Asheville's creative sector. Input by local artists, creatives, and makers alongside arts and cultural organizations and creative business leaders informs the design and development of new space. Resulting data can be used for project concept development, including how many and what types of spaces to create, space location, affordable rent structures, space sizes, building amenities, and which design features will best support the work and family needs of residents and tenants. ArtSpace was extremely impressed, this is their words, by the dedication of the Center for Crafts team in their outreach efforts and the outstanding participation in the survey by the area's creative sector. Asheville received the second highest number of responses ever in ArtSpace's history, only second to Los Angeles. To achieve this level of engagement, we developed strong partnerships with a diverse set of cultural organizations. This is a snapshot, not a comprehensive list, but one that shows the range and scale of participating organizations. Concerted outreach by all of our partnering organizations led to the impressive response rate. Of the respondents who indicated an interest in affordable spaces, 55% were between 21 and 40 years old, which is significant, and 67% of whom were female. Race percentages closely map the 2016 census data, with 16% identifying as other than Caucasian. 503 individual respondents, or 40%, indicated interest in affordable housing, which is the highest percentage that ArtSpace typically sees in communities across the United States, with a typical range of 20 to 40%. 54% of the respondents interested in affordable housing for artists qualified based on their selected household income in the survey and on the 2017 60% HUD rent and income limits, or the AMI. The data also demonstrates significant demand for studio space and highlights the variety of our creative sector. From an income perspective, 59% reported an income below the 2016 median area income of $46,443. These income statistics substantiate the need for affordable housing and other space solutions for our creative sector. And I will mention that there's more detail on the AMI breakdown on pages 22 and 23 of the technical report. Before I hand the presentation back to Elizabeth, it's important to note that 52.6% of respondents indicated that their primary income comes from work outside of their creative practice, further demonstrating that Asheville's creative sector is representative of our entire community.
Thanks, Mike. The project leadership group is grateful to Council for your time this evening, and we are also appreciative of the city's investment to date, monetarily and in staff assistance. Special thanks to Mayor Mannheimer, Vice Mayor Whistler, Councilmember Smith, Kathy Ball, Sam Power, Stephanie Monson-Dahl, and Nikki Reed for your leadership and your support. To build on our joint success and to take advantage of this unique opportunity to partner with ArtSpace, we request Council affirm that 91 Riverside Drive be developed to support affordable housing for artists and creatives, and that any and all of the city's affordable housing tools be used in support of this project, including innovative practices and policies and funds from the bond referendum and Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Thank you for your commitment, and we're happy to answer any questions. And by we, I mean Mike.
And Kit from the Chamber is also here and has really been instrumental in driving this project from the beginning, so thank you, Kit.
Any questions?
I do, yeah. So the survey that you did showed that the two highest levels of interest were interest in shared space, followed by interest in private studio. Does ArtSpace, have they developed an affordable housing building that also combines either shared or private studio space?
Yes, so typically they develop common amenities from a mixed-use perspective on the first or second floors that really meet the demands and needs that were identified as part of the survey. They also, part of the survey really shows a need also for performing arts space. So I think the question would be in the next phase of really starting to drill down and understand what can this site support. Would individual studios be the best and highest use of the project, or would common shared studio?
So what are our next steps
Yeah, I
on
was going
this?
to say.
Well, I think this is where we need Steph, actually. Is she back there still? Oh,
Step in the
she
front.
like went way back. So. This is one of the 3 sites that we're currently looking at in terms of for housing potential. So I think this is still being, tell us, what is the status of this site?
Council will hear a report further on in the agenda about those 3 sites, and specifically with 91 Riverside Drive, we will be recommending that you allow us to move forward with a memorandum of understanding, some private partners, and also art space that will allow you to receive a proposal within a specific period of time, so it does not tie you to developing it with art space or those partners. It allows them to come forward with a proposal and for you to evaluate it within the next probably 18 months.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
I do want to thank all of you all for working on this so thoroughly, and the collaboration has been really important. The process has been very thorough, and I think ArtSpace is a fantastic group and has done some great work in lots of cities. So this is a neat, I think it's an important opportunity.
Is it exciting?
It's exciting, as I said here. She's making fun of me for saying that. I said at least, I didn't say amazing. Okay, these are in no particular order. Now we're going to go to the ABC board.
Uh-oh. Hold on a minute.
Our tech expert.
While they're switching that up, how do we make sure that this housing is for artists? I mean, do you legally restrict it somehow?
So this is not the time for all of
Yeah.
that, but there is a
way.
This is a whole program.
Okay.
ArtSpace is a nonprofit that specifically works on affordable housing for artists.
So it can be done.
So it can be done,
Okay.
but there's a lot to learn about how they operate and how that works. And I think the staff realizes that, which is why we're kind of on a long-term study trajectory here. Yes, I said the right, okay, yes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. Welcome, Ms. Campbell. Snow is the perfect welcome for a new city manager, and we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
My name is Louis Isaac. I am chairperson of the Asheville ABC Board. On your first slide, you see a typical Asheville ABC store. One of the things we wanted to do in the sale of spirituous liquor is to make sure that it's not one of those places you slink in and slink out. We want it to be an attractive operation. Our number one priority for the sale of spirituous liquor is that we are responsible in our sales. We don't want to sell spirituous liquor to underage people. We don't want to sell spirituous liquor to people who are impaired. So we do a great deal of customer service training with our staff, and we have a commitment to excellence in customer service. We are responsive to the needs of our customers, yet we work with the motto of efficiency so we can give more resources back to our community. There's a current effort by some people in the state to privatize the ABC system, and one of the misconceptions that many people have is that taxes are used to operate ABC stores. It couldn't be further from the truth. We will have our operations manager, general manager for ABC will give you more specifics about what we contribute to the city and the county in our presentation. So I will now turn it over to Mark Combs, the general manager for Asheville ABC.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's exciting to be here. Asheville ABC, over the past 5 years, we've grown from $25 million of sales to over $35 million. We project $37 million in this coming fiscal year. Our income from operations have gone from 2.4 to 4.4 million. And what we're most proud of, the two biggest numbers for us, our distributions back to the city and county have gone from 1.4 million to over $3 million this past fiscal year. And part of our report card, and the most important part of our report card, is our profit percentage to sales, which is a measure of both our efficiency and our ability to run as an organization. And you can see that we've gone from 9.44% to 12.58%. Asheville ABC is a leader in innovation. Of the 167 boards in North Carolina, we're 8th in sales overall, and we're most proud of the fact that we're 3rd in commercial sales. Commercial sales are mixed beverage. There's a surcharge on that, and that's why we can give the community back a lot of money from that. Our special orders, those are liquors that are not listed specifically in the warehouse. Of the 167 boards, Asheville orders 12 to 15% statewide of all. We bend over backwards to make our vendors happy. Asheville's in the top tier in both profitability and efficiency. Service to our community, not only do we return the monies back to you that we make, but we have 11 local alcohol and rehabilitation grants, $235,000 last year. Buncombe County Rehabilitation Services gets an additional $92,000. North Carolina Department of Health Services, $102,000. And I have 3 dedicated law enforcement officers that enforce all of the liquor laws in North Carolina. That includes beer and wine. Our most ambitious project in 20 years is that we have a $3 million warehouse headquarters improvement project that we're going to be getting into in May of 2019. We've simply outgrown our facilities at 1 Cherry Street. With other potential products coming and our impending growth, this was a move that we had to make. In the future, I'll turn it back over to our chairman.
So one of the things that we see as a board is that there will be continued growth, especially in mixed beverage sales. And I have to publicly compliment Mark on his management of the ABC. We are operating like a well-oiled machine. And one of the things that happens for us as board members is we have to take that 30,000-foot view and think about what's happening in the future, what's coming up. There is a national trend to legalize cannabis, and we will probably oversee the sales and distribution because we're already a part of that control structure. One of the good things about our new warehouse is that we will have space in case that indeed does occur. We're diligent with our staff in their knowledge training, and we want our staff to be able to tell customers when they come in, if you really like this, let me give you a chance to try this, so that people will know. We don't try to sell more liquor, we try to sell better liquor. We always strive to provide excellence in service. And we have a continued focus on efficiency, and as you can see from one of our stores, on innovation and on leadership for the North Carolina ABC system. I am fortunate enough to be a member of the North Carolina ABC Commission because of the guidance and wisdom of your organization. And I can't help but praise Gwen Whistler, who comes and is an active part of our members and is a liaison to our board. So thank you again for all that you do. Mark, do you have any questions?
I had a question about your, just to clarify, this is a little bit of a, every state runs these systems differently, but ABC stores in North Carolina are state created, controlled, regulated, et cetera, except we appoint the board. Well, I mean, the whole infrastructure is created by statute.
That's correct, 18B.
Right. So that's what I mean when I say the state. It's not that cities have control over how it's structured. We couldn't change it. We couldn't privatize ABC. We couldn't make those changes.
The state legislature can choose to make that change.
Right, right.
But the way the law is written, cities and counties can choose to have ABC boards, or they can choose not to have ABC boards. So that's the choice that your predecessors made, and that's the reason we make a distribution to the city of 75% of our profit to you and 25% to Buncombe County, because that was the agreement when we were able to start our first ABC store.
That's helpful. So the gross sales you showed, they're striking in terms of their dramatic increase. I mean, it looked like from 2014 to 2018, there's an increase of $10 million a year in gross sales. You're just talking about liquor, basically, and obviously individuals can go into a store and purchase products, but is the majority of the sale to like hotels or restaurants, or who are the primary purchasers of the product?
Well, of the 35 million, about 13 or 14 million is mixed beverage.
And what does that mean when you say mixed beverage?
Mixed beverages are bars and restaurants.
You're selling it to bars and restaurants, right?
Right. And what happens is they have to pay a $3.20 on a fifth of liquor. They pay a $3.25 surcharge, but of course they pay no sales tax. So if you buy a $100 bottle of liquor, 7% on $100 is a lot more than $3.25 for a surcharge. And then the state of North Carolina allows us to keep 40% of that. So that's why we're third in the state in mixed beverage sales, is we have a very robust downtown, a very robust restaurant, visitor scene that makes us a pretty small community that beats Greensboro and High Point and Durham and a lot of other cities with way more population than us. But yet we sell over $1 million a month in mixed beverage.
So is it the mixed beverage number that's so different compared to other cities that are even larger?
It is. It makes us unique.
So in the retail, though, where individuals are purchasing, is it very different from other cities per capita?
It's typical. For instance, we're the #1 Jameson seller, and for the Irish whiskey folks. And we also sell what are a lot of browns, a lot of bourbons and scotches and stuff that are unusual in North Carolina too.
But the individual purchases, I think there's a perception, I'm just trying to get the perception in Asheville is that there's more drinking happening in Asheville, and I'm trying to get at, it sounds to me like what you're saying is individual purchases, retail is about normal compared to the rest of the state. Where we see this increase is because we basically have a tourism industry where you have hotels and restaurants purchasing.
That's completely accurate. Yeah, our per capita drinking is normal.
Or normal.
Except, like Saturday, people had to tank up because,
This doesn't cover beer. We are not doing beer.
Beer or wine.
Beer or wine, right.
For instance, we did almost $250,000 on Saturday with anticipation of Snowmageddon. So snow is our friend.
Snow is our friend.
Okay, everybody. Now we know what they were doing all weekend.
And you will notice that there weren't any greater accidents over the weekend.
Yeah, right. They took them home. They took it home.
Right. Apparently, it's not just bread and milk everyone gets. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
We're not done yet, folks. Here, we're going to Neighborhood Advisory Committee update, and I have that Phil is going to do this one. Phil Lenowitz.
you missed the real Snowmageddon in 1993,
That's what we keep hearing.
and it's wonderful.
I think I'm glad I did.
And I want to thank you for, this is the first time when I sent my presentation in, Ms. Campbell reviewed it and sent back suggestions for improvement. So if you have any criticism, thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of what your Neighborhood Advisory Committee has heard from neighborhoods in the city of Asheville. These are the concerns that were raised at our 3 regional meetings that we held this year, North Region, Central Region, and West Region, and at our Festival of Neighborhoods, which the mayor and Kathy Ball attended. This is your Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and I'll ask them to stand. Most of our folks are here tonight. As you can see, we represent all areas of the city, and we're a diverse group, and we're very proud of that. Quick recap. The Neighborhood Advisory Committee serves as a sounding board for neighborhood issues, a place where citizens can come and share their concerns, and our role is to bring those concerns to City Council. It was created in 2012, pushed by Chris Pelley, councilman back then, and we continue. So here's the short list of neighborhood citizen concerns that we've heard. And again, this is from our 3 regional meetings and the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. I'm sorry, the Festival of Neighborhoods. You're probably familiar with many of these, and in some cases, neighborhood leaders have made some suggestions for addressing these issues, and as I go through them in detail, I'll share those suggestions with you. So traffic, probably highest on everyone's list. Traffic conditions are considered dangerous. Speeding through neighborhoods is causing alarm. We know there's a paradox among the people who complain about the speeding through neighborhoods are sometimes the ones who are speeding through neighborhoods. But enforcement is high on everybody's list. What would be helpful is continuing to communicate with neighborhoods to ensure participation in the Merriman Avenue and the Charlotte Street plans, and to support Vision Zero to move Asheville off the most dangerous city list. My understanding is that you've created a multidisciplinary task force to look into Vision Zero, and we hope you'll continue to support it. Sidewalks, a safety issue. I recall a couple of years ago, Councilman Bothwell pointing out that at our current rate of building sidewalks, it would take approximately 450 years to complete the sidewalks in the 2004 plan. Almost every neighborhood wants them. We talk about maintenance of sidewalks that are in disrepair, as well as new sidewalks for neighborhoods that don't have any. One of the recommendations is to explore less expensive options for pedestrians, unpaved trails, gravel perhaps, or mulch, things that will make it safer. Rapid growth, inadequate infrastructure, housing, speed of development. These are no surprises to anyone, but the citizens want to be kept informed as well. The neighborhoods want to be kept informed. No surprises. We were pleased with last year's decision to require developers to notify homeowners within 200 feet of a proposed project and give those residents an opportunity to meet with the developer. But 200 feet isn't enough. We think that neighborhood leaders should be given notice as well, so that the impacted neighborhoods can also weigh in when there's a proposed development nearby. The scale of the proposed development is concerning. The Sears Tower, Fuddruckers, things that people find out about sometimes through the rumor mill. Gentrification, nothing new, but as housing costs go up, we hear about it from the neighborhoods. One of the suggestions was to support the corridor plan that Todd Oklachaney's group is working on to get people to be able to live closer to where they work, so there's less traffic and better housing. Noise isn't about parties, loud parties, or barking dogs. It is, but this concern is more about commercial industrial noise that comes from building, music venues, slamming dumpsters early in the morning. These are not rules that are addressed, and the city needs to address them. One of the suggestions are quiet times so that slamming dumpsters at 4 o'clock in the morning is prohibited. It's a noisy planet, the National Institute on Deafness and Other Communication Disorders tells us, a part of the National Institutes of Health. And their concern is about hearing loss in youngsters, pre-teenagers, and they've engaged in an education program for the young people and their parents to try to avoid more hearing loss. It's hard enough to get your kids to listen to you. Adding hearing loss is not going to help. Greenways. People are happy about greenways. Neighborhoods welcome them, and they look forward to walking on them. Neighborhood and small area plans. Not too long ago in this room, the Shiloh neighborhood plan that had been adopted by the city was the asset that kept a developer from encroaching into the Shiloh neighborhood. Neighborhoods are aware of this, and they want in on that action. They want the opportunity for a neighborhood plan or a group of neighborhoods, a small area plan. The city would help with a process for adopting these plans, for developing these plans, and we suggest supporting the Planning and Urban Design Group so you can expand the number of these plans that neighborhoods can develop and plan for their own future. Signage for neighborhoods. Neighborhoods want to put up signs, "Welcome to my neighborhood." And you will recall several years ago, the Neighborhood Advisory Committee reps met and served on the committees to develop a new city sign policy. When the Supreme Court issued a decision on the content of signs, limiting the content of signs, the plan was shelved and nothing further heard. So I think people want to get signs, and revisiting the sign policy by the city would be one of the suggestions. Short-term vacation rental enforcement. It's been in this room many, many hours. It's not going away. The main concern about non-resident investors taking over neighborhoods is real. We hear it. But enforcement is a concern of those who don't want unlawful short-term vacation rentals in their neighborhood, and also shared by those who have legal homestays, who don't want lawbreakers to disrupt their neighborhood and, quite frankly, their legal business. And neighborhoods want to be engaged in the enforcement process. Bears. We all see the postings on Nextdoor, the videos, the cute videos, the pictures of them. We've named the bear that comes through our neighborhood. It's Sammy. We don't know if it's a male or a female. At our Neighborhood Advisory Committee Festival of Neighborhoods, the city gave a handout on how to deal with bears, and it was very good. I shared it with many of my neighbors, but the fear is that someone will get hurt. As you see, there's no suggestion for how to deal with it.
That's helpful.
Thank you.
So, what we need from City Council. Are there issues that City Council wants us to probe? We need support for neighborhood and small area plans. We need support for Vision Zero to reduce crashes. And the question is, there are 35 committees, part of citizen governance in our town. Is the Neighborhood Advisory Committee still relevant? I'll answer any questions, or have somebody who knows more than I do that. Before I do, I want to thank Brenda Mills, who is the Neighborhood and Community Engagement Manager, who supports us and who has been extremely helpful to us. Last time we were here, we had an interim, and now that we have Brenda permanently, it's made a big difference.
I just want to comment. I'm the council liaison to this group, and just want to thank Phil, you, and everybody else on the committee who spend so much time dealing with these issues and kind of talking to people about a lot of the quality of life issues that impact their daily lives. In terms of what I hear, just outside of the Festival of Neighborhoods and others, everything that you've listed on here are issues that folks are talking about. I mean, we were talking about the budget thing, speeding, all those kinds of quality of life issues that folks may not come to a city council meeting to talk about, whether they don't have the opportunity, the time, or maybe a little scared about getting in front of a group like this. But having the committee, having NAC is very helpful, because they can take it to you. You all can talk to other communities, and you understand that these issues are not just one person in one neighborhood having a problem, but it's concerns that are shared all across the city that may not often get to us or the paper. So we appreciate it, Phil.
Thank you.
Just a couple of reflections on some of the things that you mentioned. So I love the idea of requiring notification of developments to registered neighborhoods. I think on our next PED agenda, we were supposed to have a meeting yesterday that got canceled, but I think on our agenda we're going to be talking about expanding the required notice to renters, and I feel like there was somebody else. So we can certainly add that for consideration. I think that's a great idea. I think there's also some work afoot on revising the noise ordinance. And then I wanted to ask about the signs. What's going on
I
with
was
signs?
thinking about that because, so there's been a major U.S. Supreme Court opinion on sign regulations severely limiting cities, and I'm wondering if what you referred to as the old plan is even anything viable. We have revised our sign ordinances several times, I think, since that time, but I hesitate to sit here and direct staff to start working on a sign, because it is such an incredible undertaking to deal with a sign ordinance because of the constitutional law portion of it. And we have an interim city attorney. Sabrina's amazing, but she's can barely drink from the fire hose. We constantly handing her random things like e-scooters and whatever. But we are this week interviewing for a city attorney. We don't know if we'll be hiring one yet, but we're making progress in that regard. So that would be, that is a big undertaking, and one, we'd have to really think about whether we want to get back into that issue.
Well, and I don't know if there's a way to crack it open narrowly for just this purpose of neighborhood signs, or maybe there's something we can put, a lot of neighborhoods.
Narrowly cracking a sign.
Well, I know, like in Charlotte, I was there, I guess, I don't know, a year or so ago, and a lot of neighborhoods, they don't have a sign that's stuck in the ground. They have something on top of the street sign, which is maybe a city thing. Maybe that's something we can do to create that sense of place. So maybe we can put that on the list of things for the new city attorney to look at. And then on the short-term vacation rentals, there is a whole actually new effort going on about that I hope you all know about, and if NAC or
with
CAN
Jackson?
needs to be, exactly.
We're involved.
Not that we're going to answer all your questions, but in your first, are there issues City Council wants us to probe? Earlier tonight, we talked about the whole engagement, community engagement. How do people learn about issues that go on in the city? How much do they want to participate? So for me, I think the neighborhood group would help us a lot by asking those questions. How do you want to get informed? How do you want to participate, so that we could get that, work on delving into that issue, because we're constantly hearing, well, I didn't know anything about this, and it's like, well, how would you like to know about it, kind of thing. So for me, that would be one of the issues I would love to hear from your group about, and you work on getting that kind of information. And to your last question, yes, the Neighborhood Advisory Committee is relevant.
Thank you. We can do that. We'll get that information.
I'm glad that we have a Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and I think it's been very useful. And I like the Festival of Neighborhoods, and I like that it helps provide an identity for neighborhoods and a communication forum for neighborhoods to speak to one another. I am not able to marry the issue around urban infill projects that are creating heartburn and the desire to situate housing close to workplaces. That does not go together.
It seems odd, but there was some support for the corridor plans. It comes from that, and the idea that this would be helpful longer term.
Okay. Maybe I need to just learn more about it. Maybe that's more nuanced than but I think though that Asheville is sort of experiencing that conflicting view that people want less traffic, less cars, and they want people to be able to walk and bike and get to work and to shop and the grocery store, but they don't want any infill development. Right. So that's very difficult. Just hard to balance that.
I don't think Phil was suggesting that. I think in the conversations I've heard you all say, and just having a little experience in this area on both sides, a lot of the stuff that has been handled that you all talked about here, this opportunity to have neighborhoods notified and sit down with the developers, often actually takes a lot of those issues, settles them. I mean, one of the biggest problems that I think folks have, and you noticed it here, is being surprised, saying something's coming in here, getting concerned about that, thinking it's the ultimate worst thing, and then if you're actually able to sit down face to face with the developer who's proposing it, you may be able to hear the concerns we really have, and in most cases, in talking with some of the developers, they've actually found this to be helpful. I think initially they were like, oh, this is just a bump in the road that either we'll ignore or it's really there to derail our project. But in reality, it ends up being an opportunity to better explain what's going on and honestly, what could be the alternative going in here, if not what they're proposing.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I think that's productive. And I mean, before VJ was on council, I had that experience with him in that capacity more than once.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that to me is productive. But I guess I wasn't reading the slide. It was a little more black and white. I wasn't reading it to be okay with the infill development. But I think if that's the direction we want input, we want to be able to have access to the developer and talk about scale and talk about, those sorts of things. That's, to me, very valid.
The surprise issue comes up when the city doesn't have a proposal in front of them yet, so there's no way for the city to give notice, but the developer is creeping around looking at Fuddruckers and measuring things.
Well, and they're not, this is part of the process that's a little bit challenging. I would offer that the developer's not actually creeping around, they're following the required notification to the neighborhood before they bring the project forward. And what ends up happening is council doesn't know that they've sent notices to the neighborhood and that 300 people in the case of Fuddruckers showed up to a meeting that we didn't know about, and we haven't seen the proposal yet, and then we get 300 emails about it. So we don't yet know anything about it. So we need to add to the list of who gets the notification, might be council, so that we're aware that neighborhood meeting is happening, and what's happening at that meeting. Yeah, so that's good.
Thank you.
Thanks. We have one other presentation tonight, and that is the audit presentation. We say the best for last, right? Well, in Gwen's case, yes.
Most exciting for last.
You are not Patricia Rosenberg. You are Barbara Whitehorn. Oh, here we go.
All right. And I'm Barbara Whitehorn, the Chief Financial Officer, but I'm going to turn it over to Patricia for this.
Hi, I'm Patricia Rosenberg, the Internal Auditor.
You're
a little
tall for that. Okay, there you go.
And I'm just here to introduce Robbie Bittner. He's the Senior Audit Manager for RSM. RSM is contracted with the city to perform the financial and single audits for fiscal year 2018, and he's here to report on it.
Thank you, Patricia. Council, it's good to see you again. First off, I'd just like to say thank you very much for allowing us to serve the city. We do appreciate it. This is our first year that we've been engaged to perform the audit for the city. Previously, you had other auditors, so we a little bit of changeover this year, a little bit deep diving, but we overall want to say thank you to Barbara and her team for really answering all of our questions and doing everything that we asked, which was quite robust, but we really do appreciate it. So I'm just going to try to go through this fairly quickly. If you at any point have any questions, please feel free to stop, ask at any point in time. So we're going to just kind of go through the financial results at the beginning of the year for the financial statements. As auditors, we can provide 4 different types of opinions. We can provide an adverse opinion or an opinion that states that your financial statements we do not believe are in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. We can disclaim an opinion, which either means we are just completely stepping away and we're not going to issue an opinion, or there is nothing to audit that we can even have any sort of opinion. We can qualify or issue a modified opinion, which states that your financial statements are in conformance with GAAP except for this one little piece. And we can issue a unmodified opinion, or our highest level of assurance we can provide as auditors. So I'm happy to say for the financial statements, the city did receive an unmodified opinion for this year. Go through some of the compliance results for this year as well. On top of generally accepted auditing standards, we also audit under 3 additional sets of standards. That being the first one, the government auditing standards, or what's known as the Yellow Book. These are standards listed for all governments that spend or receive federal or state grants in excess of $25,000. There's the Federal Single Audit Act, or the Uniform Guidance, which is auditing standards specifically designed around your federal grants. And then there's the State Single Audit Implementation Act, which kind of mirrors the Uniform Guidance, but it is for your state grants versus your federal grants. So as part of our reporting requirements, we not only issue under government auditing standards, our report on the financial statements, but also our report on compliance and internal control. In that report does not actually issue an opinion, but really is a statement of facts of what we found. But we also issue 2 reports, a separate opinion on the fair statement of the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and a statement of fairness of your schedule of state awards, along with their compliance with federal requirements. And you received an unmodified opinion on both those, stating that we believe that you have complied with all federal and state grant requirements, and your schedule of federal and state awards is fairly presented in conformance with GAAP. So as part of our reporting requirements, we have, under government auditing standards, we have to communicate what we consider to certain types of deficiencies in internal control. There are 3 levels of deficiencies in internal control. There is a material weakness, which is the most severe. A material weakness in internal control is either a defect in the design or operation of a control that has led to or could lead to a material misstatement in your financial statements. I'm happy to say that the city did not have any internal control weaknesses that we considered to be material weaknesses in the current year. The next item, not quite as severe as a material weakness, but still under government auditing standards required to be communicated to those charged with governance or the council, would be a significant deficiency in internal control. Again, these are items that, while they're not a material weakness, they do rise to the level of being communicated. We had 2 items that we considered to be significant deficiencies in the current year. The least severe item, just a control deficiency, could be as simply as a minor oversight that did not necessarily cause a change in how we view the operation of internal controls, but under government auditing standards, we are required to communicate those to the board or the council, not necessarily in the report, but in other communications. So we'll go through the two significant deficiencies we had this year. The numbering convention is set forth by standard. We don't get to choose how they get numbered. So the first one is related to the financial statement closing process, and this just has to relate to the multitude of journal entries that came in after what was considered to be a financial statement close. None of these by themselves were considered significant, but it's the multitude, the sheer number of them that came in that we felt like overall in the program, in the grand scheme of things, there should be a significant deficiency communicated related to that. The second one is related to cutoff. What we mean by cutoff is really what period is revenues or expenditures placed into. So we had several cutoff issues this year related to small amounts of revenue that resulted in items from 2017 being in 18 or 18 being in 19 or vice versa. None of these items are material by themselves, but again, as brought together, they need to be communicated.
So in this issue, it's not a matter of money not accounting for money, it's just the time period in which the money was accounted.
Yes, sir. Yes, there's, just reiterate, there's nothing here that indicates any kind of fraud, waste, or abuse or anything of that nature.
Can
All
you
it
say
is
that
is-
again?
Hmm?
Can you say
There's
that
nothing
again?
here that indicates any fraud, waste, or abuse. It's literally
Thank you.
just timing for the second one, and the first one is related to just some minor accounting items that, as a culmination, really, caused a few delays. But other than that, that's that. So, any questions? As part of your reporting package, management is required under government auditing standards to provide a what's called a corrective action plan. You can see here that Barbara and her team have put together a good solid plan of how they're going to overcome these issues. And from what I understand, a lot of the procedures that has been suggested are actually being considered at this point and already partially in place and should be in place by the end of the year. So the last little thing I'll go over is as part of any audit, we are required to have certain communications with those charged with governance under Statement of Accounting Standards number 114 or what's considered AUC 260 these days after the codification. And these are just simple communications that that arose from items from like the WorldComs and Enrons of the world. Had the boards or councils known about some of these issues that arose during an audit, then the audit failures that occurred may not have occurred. So the biggest thing that we have to communicate is your accounting policies and procedures. This year, the city implemented GASB Statement number 75, which resulted in a restatement of beginning net position related to their net OPEB liability or other post-employment benefits. This is nationwide. All governments that have an OPEB plan had to implement this standard this year. It resulted in a decrease in the net position from the government-wide financial statements. However, really from an overall operations of the city, that really has no real effect. So, other things we had several audit adjustments this year, which kind of culminated into the significant deficiency that we stated earlier, and we had a few uncorrected misstatements, very minor in stature things, nothing that we would consider material by any means. And so we had no disagreements with management. And we also just needed to let you know that we separately communicated 3 control deficiencies to management in a management letter. That should be part of your PDF copy of this report that you received. So in closing, I just want to say that, again, the city had an unmodified or clean opinion on their financial statements, on their scheduled expenditures of state and federal awards, and on their compliance with federal and state grant requirements. And be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much. And I do want to shout out to our newly formed audit committee who also received this presentation this afternoon, and actually in a bit more detail, if I recall. I think it was like an hour-long presentation. And our finance committee too. But the audit committee will be interested in the finance department implementing these recommendations and correcting these deficiencies. And earlier, Barbara assured us that next year there won't be anywhere near 60 adjustments after the audit. After the close of the financials. So we really appreciate it. And for all the people who are very interested in our numbers, the CAFR, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, is also attached as a document, and so you can learn all sorts of great things about the city and all the numbers, the actual, once it's closed. And I think it's like in the, about like 150 pages, more than that, a lot of pages long.
152-sided, I believe.
Yeah, like 200 pages long. So get out there and read it and get to know your city through the numbers.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our presentations and reports. I feel like that section has grown. Maggie, don't you think that was kind of a record? Yeah, that was a long one. Our first public hearing item tonight is a public hearing to consider a performance-based economic development incentive grant for Burial Beer Company, LLC. And I have that Sam is doing this. There he is. Woo! It's like magic. He just appeared.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Sam Powers, Community and Economic Development. Tonight's consideration is a resolution authorizing a performance-based economic development incentive agreement with Burial Beer Company, LLC. The city's been requested by the Buncombe County EDC to consider a performance-based incentive agreement under the city's economic development policy to an existing Asheville manufacturing facility operated by Burial Beer Company, LLC. The purpose of this city's participation would be to help the company make additional investments in the city for expenditures to acquire and install machinery and equipment and make facility improvements which would increase the tax base in the city as determined by the Buncombe County Tax Department in the amount of $1.8 million and to create 17 new median wage jobs with benefits. It should be noted that the company is a living wage certified company. It's also, as I've noted, a performance-based agreement that would be based on a reimbursement, a grant reimbursement of 50% of the new incremental increased taxes by the project for a period of a 5-year agreement. Based on the $1.8 million investment, the grant amount is estimated at this point to be $3,842 a year, and in total over the 5-year period, approximately $19,200. But in no instance would it exceed $30,000. And the reason there's just a little bit of ambiguity there is, again, the tax rate varies and the investment, hopefully will be a little more than the 1.8, but we put that ceiling in there so both the city and the company know what the limits of our investment in the project would be. North Carolina state law requires a public hearing to be held before an incentive grant can be officially awarded. This meets the council's goal for helping a thriving local economy. It has been previously considered by council. I'll take just a moment. This project was originally contemplated in in 2015-16. Our process generally is to get council's interest in participating in a project as we are allowed to do confidentially. A public announcement is made by the company. That public announcement is made, and then we proceed to hold a public hearing and publicly ratify any council participation, and the county does likewise. In this case, the good news is the company has been active, they've been busy working, and the project has been proceeding, and it's a great project that they're nearing completion on. This, again, supports the growth of existing manufacturing inside the city limits. It's performance-driven, meaning that the agreement and the funding is not distributed until after the job and investments are achieved and verified. It supports capital investment in the city and supports regional and state cooperation and economic development. As noted, there's a formula that we use, and in this case, 50% of the new incremental increase for a 5-year period would be the grant based on performance. That concludes my report. Doug Reeser, who is one of the co-founders of Burial Beer, is present tonight. I would ask him if he would make just a couple of brief comments about Burial Beer's work in the community and what they're doing with this project, Mayor, and then you would be able to open the public hearing, and I'll be available now or after or during the public hearing to answer any questions that council has. So if we could ask Doug if he could come up.
All right, I need to have this thing up to my head. All right, I just want to mention first that this is the first time I've been in what feels like a courtroom, but is a hearing room in about a decade since I retired from the practice of law. And last time I had a suit on. And I just want to commend the city of Asheville for being so amazing, allowing me to wear a flannel shirt and jeans to a hearing. I want to thank the city for supporting our vision and our dream with Forest You Can. Without the support of the city, I don't know that we would have been able to take our first step forward with this project. It's very daunting. We moved here in 2012 with a newborn, a small pocket of cash, and a crazy pipe dream to open a 30-gallon little brewery in a southern part of the downtown that didn't even have a name at the time, and people didn't like to walk around down there. We've since grown by leaps and bounds organically, reinvesting customer dollars back into our own spaces, building a tap room that has become a little slice of Asheville to visitors from around the world, a welcoming place for creators in this local community, and I think a sustainable and really inspiring place for the employees that work for us. We've also tirelessly traveled the globe, Tim Gormley, my partner, and I, spreading the gospel, as we like to say it, about the Asheville spirit. And it's helped us garner a lot of wonderful national acclaim for Asheville and its beer community. This year we were named the #5 small brewer in the world by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. Still an unbelievable ride for 5 years from us to go from brewing in pots and pans, basically, on the South Slope, to building what we now hope to open in a couple months down in the Biltmore Village area, which is our Forest You Can project. We are more than a brewery at Burial. We have grown horizontally, sustainably, allowing our team to help foster growth into other spaces like apparel and construction and winemaking. That was my call. And food fermentation and all the other things that we continue to grow into without just trying to become a massive brand. It's something that's been really important to Tim and I, and something that we continue to foster with our team. We have invested time and effort in growing organically, not only as a company, but as a team. We have bartenders that are art directors. We have former cabinet makers that are head contractors. We have ex-marketing exec that's a brewer. We've fostered dreams for a lot of people who fell into traditional careers that may have been unfulfilling and found a place at Burial doing something that they really love to do. We're really proud of that. Just in conclusion, I don't know if that's my time. But Forestry Camp gave us the opportunity to reinvigorate something that was dead and decaying. It's something that we feel very strongly about. This is a 90-year-old property that was federally built to house the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, something you might be familiar with. It had fallen on worse times, became kind of a transient camp for homeless. There was a skate park there at one point. Some pretty weird graffiti. We have since re-beautified. It's taken us about 3 years. It has not been easy to do that on our own without outside investment, but it's something that was really important to us so we could keep this company in the hands of the creators. We are almost there. We're excited to share it with everybody here. We think it is the perfect outlet for Asheville's creative spirit, giving the microphone to the makers of awesome products from around this world in food and beverage and beyond, and allowing them to share their stories here in Asheville with our local creators. I just want to take one last moment to, in conclusion, thank you guys. Without this gift, we wouldn't have been able to do it. We've invested, since we've made this commitment with the city, we've invested over $3 million ourselves in building this property and our other project downtown. We've also added at least 25 jobs as of today. We have 2 more hires coming in next week, including expanding into new places like media and apparel, and it's been a lot of fun for us, so thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone wishing to comment on this item, please raise your hand. Oh, you do? Okay. Or just stand up. Yes.
Okay.
No, you're good.
No.
Come forward, come to the microphone.
There are millions of people watching this.
Yeah,
They need to.
Just state your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll take less of that. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for letting me speak. I lead the Industry Expansion and Workforce Development Programs for the Economic Development Coalition, and we're a proud partner of Buncombe County, City of Asheville Council, and the Asheville Area Chamber. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak of, as you've heard, this fast-growing, locally headquartered manufacturer here in Asheville, our friends at Burial Beer. In the last decade, the brewery employment has grown over 1,400%. That's 1,400% here in the Asheville metro area. And Burial Beer is an important part of that growth story, not just because of the kind of quality employer that they continue to be, or because we happen to be fans of their product, but because Burial fits squarely in the sights of our AVL 5x5 strategic plan, which you all are aware of, growing high-wage, sustainable, and diversified employers here in the city of Asheville. So expansions like this, as Sam mentioned, increase our tax base, create career ladder opportunities for our residents, and tell other aspiring startups and businesses that Asheville is a place to grow a world-class business. So thank you for your consideration, and thank you for your support of this homegrown success story.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution authorizing a performance-based economic development agreement to support the existing industry expansion of Burial Beer Company in the city of Asheville.
Okay, Brian seconded it, even though your microphone is.
Your microphone.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Or any questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Next, I need a motion to continue item B to March 26th.
So moved.
A second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to continue item B to March 26th. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the motion to continue item B? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next is a public hearing to consider the conditional zoning of property at 62 Fairview Road from commercial industrial district to lodging expansion conditional zone for the development of a 6-story, 170-room hotel with a restaurant. Ms. Bernstein is here to present the project.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, members of the public. As was stated, this is a request for a conditional zoning
from CI, Commercial Industrial, to Lodging Expansion Conditional Zoning District for the new lodging use. The project site consists of a single parcel, 3.7 acres in size at 62 Fairview Road. This is just southeast of Biltmore Village. The parcel is currently zoned commercial industrial, as was stated. Adjacent parcels are commercial industrial. Across the property is bounded by railroad line to the north, and across that is urban place zoning. There's also river district, community business, and urban place conditional zoning in the vicinity. The site currently has a building on it that would be removed, as shown here on the Exhibit B map. Also of note with the site, it's a brownfield site, and it's also within the floodplain of the Sweeten Creek, so there's some constraints. Uses in the vicinity include primarily industrial uses still immediately surrounding, but then high-density residential just down Fairview Road. There's residential across Michael Village, across the train tracks, and then it's just outside of Biltmore Village, so there's a variety of retail and office uses nearby. The proposal is to construct a hotel use on the site that also has meeting and event space, 125-seat restaurant. The hotel is 170 rooms. There's associated parking as shown on the site plan. The hotel building is shown at 6 stories in height. The restaurant that is closer up to Fairview Road, that's 2 stories. The vehicular access to the site is shown on the site plan. It's just a single driveway from Fairview Road. There is secondary access that you can see around the rear of the site that goes out a shared right-of-way to the side. There's 140 parking spaces throughout that site. Sidewalks are required to be 10 feet for the lodging expansion district. There's really limited frontage for the parcel, but the sidewalks that they will construct will be 10 feet and meet that standard, as well as a 10-foot wide walkway that enters into the site where the applicant has agreed to place a transit shelter. There just wasn't sufficient width directly at the street, so they'll place that transit shelter in the site with an access for public use. Landscaping is required for the project, includes street trees, parking lot landscaping, building impact landscaping. It's all on the site, on the plans that you've received in your packets. There's a number of design and operational standards that go along with the lodging expansion district, and the plans are able to meet those. They do comply. There is one condition for this proposal that has to do with the existing site condition that's detailed in the report. Lodging expansion asks for 100-foot minimum lot frontage. This site has only about 47 feet of frontage, and that's existing going back to at least 1944. The applicant held the required neighborhood meetings. The project was approved with conditions by the Technical Review Committee in July. The applicant received unanimous support from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Sorry, go ahead. Do you look like you had a question?
What was the result of the neighborhood meeting?
The applicant is required to hold the neighborhood meeting, and they supply comments that come back, and then it's just a part of the record. Staff doesn't attend that meeting.
Have you gotten any feedback from
the
neighborhood?
No, not much. There were 2 members of the public who spoke at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last month. And right at the beginning when the project was submitted, we did have a couple of emails from folks. Primarily the concerns that we've heard have been regarding existing traffic volume on Fairview Road. And but the comments that we received at Planning and Zoning Commission were in support of the project from these 2 nearby property owners. One of them, she did express concern about existing traffic on Fairview Road, but also was pleased to see that this project included that restaurant space that members of the public would be able to come to and enjoy. So aside from that, staff reviewed the project. The proposal is compatible with the surrounding uses and zoning. The addition of sidewalks and the transit shelter meets with council's goals. The Living Asheville plan notes this area as a town center where lodging uses are considered to be appropriate, and then transit and walkability features are emphasized. There's a couple of new conditions that I wanted to point out. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the commissioners requested that the applicant utilize a shuttle service to take guests to downtown or Biltmore House or other points of interest, and they agreed to that. The applicant also agreed to provide bus passes for any employees. And then there's a couple of other conditions that were late additions that had to do with building materials. The applicant has agreed to ensure that the building surfaces that front on or adjacent to or visible from the public rights of way will be authentic and natural materials. There's also a request for non-reflective glass. That's something that we have for downtown projects. So we're trying to add in some of this other places where pedestrian activity is prioritized. And then we also added a last condition regarding signage, that they would be subject to the signage of the underlying zoning district. So aside from that, staff recommends approval of this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, staff. My name is Derek Allen, and I represent the developer on this project. I do also have with me Michael Amican from Rockbridge, who's the development group, Tom Hogan, who's the architect, and Chris Day, who's the engineer. Also want to thank Jessica and the rest of staff. We've met with the interim city manager, the new city manager, Stephanie Monsendahl, Jessica, talked to Paul D'Angelo about affordable housing issues and opportunity zone issues. Just a lot of folks that have had input on it. We even met with staff late last week after meeting with the city manager, with Quinn, to talk about additional design conditions, and those are those two late ads today relating to building materials. I do want to address an issue that I've discussed with folks here recently, and that is just the hotels in general. We're in a time period right now where I think that those things are important, and we have to look at these on a case-by-case basis and see what's unique and what makes sense, both in terms of the context and where it's being proposed and what's happening with it. Does it serve other things that we need in our community? Is it something that's unique to Asheville? Does it make sense? There are some that I know we wish we could take back. There's some that came through before required city council hearings. There were some that came through afterwards that maybe were improvidently granted. And so I think we have to take a hard look now to make sure that we are letting those ones that do make sense go through. And with that in mind, I think it's important that we as land use professionals, city staff, and ultimately city council are looking at those individually and giving them the care and attention they deserve. With Rockbridge, we think we have that unique project in this particular location. They are independent hotel owner-operators. They've got hotels in Nashville and in Dallas, and in each of those hotel locations, they seek out specific characteristics of that community and highlight them. In Nashville, it's music. Nashville's a music town. Here in Asheville, it makes sense that it's going to be all things craft restaurant, craft beer, craft coffee. We've been talking with the ownership group for Table and All Day, which was the Old Tides, and High Five Coffee, about locating down in the village in this particular location. It's a 170-room hotel, 140 parking places. We tried to limit the parking in terms of the number of parking places, and we placed the parking on the north side of the building, going back up the hill on the side with the big retaining wall under district, and in the non-buildable area that's adjacent to the railroad tracks. It has a 125-seat restaurant. It has a coffee shop, 3,000 square feet of meeting space, which I know is needed down there, 5,500 square feet of ballroom events, conference room space. The height is limited to 80 feet. And for context, the 60-foot retaining wall is just behind it. That's the one you can see from the bridge over in the village. So it's just a little bit higher than that retaining wall and takes it out of view from that perspective. 10-foot wide sidewalks throughout the site, and on Fairview Road, it'll have 100 to 120 employees, and the applicant has committed to living wage for all those employees, including bus passes for all employees. In addition, we have a transit shelter that we've committed to and a shuttle for guests. In terms of the timing of this project, it's a little bit unfortunate there was a delay in the project. The neighborhood meeting was back in June, and there was no opposition then. TRC approval came right after that in July. And then we had multiple meetings and new requirements from NCDOT in terms of traffic impact analysis and how those were reviewed. That went back and forth. In fact, we only received the comments from NCDOT last week. In terms of continuing that timing, we weren't heard by planning and zoning until last month. There was unanimous approval there and no opposition of any of the speakers, only speakers in support. This project site is currently 35,000 square feet of warehouse space. It's built about 60 years ago. It's located just down from the district apartment site. That, as a refresher for you, is 309 units, 484 beds up on the hill, very visible. This is in an opportunity zone. The window, as you might know, is tight for opportunity zone projects right now. I understand the council has been briefed by some of our state and other ED folks about this. I've discussed the project with Paul D'Angelo, and I've asked him to be available tonight for any questions that you have on the opportunity zone concept and application to this particular project. The site is also on a brownfield site. Every time we see a development project come through now, the first question I'm getting is, can we use this for multifamily? Can we use this for affordable housing? Here it's not eligible for any residential, any long-term residential, not eligible for multifamily without remediation to the site consistent with the Brownsfield agreement. It is eligible for hotel use and restaurant use. It's infill development. We've heard a lot about that so far just tonight. And it bookends the Biltmore Village with hotel comparable to the Bohemian on the other side of the village. It helps to finish out the sidewalk improvements that the district and the city are completing that connects the district apartments and the neighborhood to the north of the district apartments to Biltmore Village. It's comprehensive plan compliant, and it just makes sense for this area. It really does. As we continued our conversation and folks who we would talk to, we thought it was going to be important for us to talk to a lot of the retailers that are in and around the Biltmore Village area. Those retailers are local shops, locally owned, locally operated. You don't see a lot of national brands in that area, and there's a village of craftsmen, both the food, the shops, etc. And our original thought when we started those discussions was that it was going to be about the patrons that might be coming to their shops based on the hotel occupants. And what became clear was that it was more than just that for them. There are concerns from some of the Biltmore Village merchants that that area, that side of Biltmore Village lacks cohesiveness, lacks a hard edge, and they were really concerned about that, and they looked at this as a way to give some definitiveness and some comprehensive planning to that side of Biltmore Village. We talked to Billy Pyatt at Catawba and Dima Bader at Scout Boutique and Aaron Wilson at French Broad Brewing and Brandy Hillman at Hillman Brewing and others about this project, and all were in favor of it. Addressing the issues that we've heard come up, either from city council members or from staff or from the city manager, traffic. That was the number one thing that came up. And looking at the traffic impact analysis and getting back the comments from NCDOT last week, once those improvements go into place for the intersections that are involved and that are right below this project, traffic will improve. It improves there in terms of the level of service. Just for information purposes, acceptable level of service for signalized intersections is D. Right now, the existing signal at Sweeten Creek and London Road operates as a C in the evening, with northbound and southbound operating at D and E. The existing signal there is semi-actuated with loops only at London Road. With the project improvements, with loops on all approaches, those improvements will improve the overall intersection from a C to a B, and no approach will be below a C. So all approaches improve with the implementation of the new intersection improvements that NCDOT is asking for. Other issues that we heard about were density and parking on the site. Due to easement, floodplain, setback, the building envelope is actually pretty small. The building envelope is exactly where you see that building. If you look at page 15 of your council packet, you will see that the easements, floodplain, and setbacks really tighten in where you can put that building. And everything inside the building envelope consists of the hotel, and almost all of the parking is outside of that area, outside of the building envelope. We've also tried to shield the parking from view. If you look at this, this is essentially the view coming up Fairview Road. The majority of the parking is on the back side of this, between the hotel and the railroad tracks, and the rest of the parking is on the hillside behind on the north side of the proposed hotel. Another concern was that this as a town center in the comprehensive plan, and it didn't have all the elements of a town center. The answer to that is, well, it can't. It's too small of a site. It's 3.7 acres. But the thing that I think makes sense is to back up and look at this in the total context of the entire patchwork of quilt that's down in Biltmore Village. And if you stand at 25,000 feet, then you have a hotel on either end of Biltmore Village. You have tons of new residential at Biltmore Village, and you have more than 40 shops owned, operated, that thrive on local patrons being able to walk to it. So I think that's absolutely town center, and you've got these two focal points on either end. With those things in mind, I'll get back to the original comments I had on the hotel. Turning down all projects just because there are hotels makes no more sense than letting them all through. We want you as citizens, we want you as developers to look closely at the mall. We want you to look for the unique ones. We want you to look for the ones that further other uses, other people like the folks in the village. Here you have an opportunity zone that this city designated. You have a brownfield site that has been rehabilitated, and this makes sense on completing the outer edge to support those locally owned businesses. My time's up. I thank you for your time.
I have a couple of questions. Yeah, for Derek. Okay. So Derek, on the issue of the traffic, so when you guys did the traffic analysis, you were looking at the impact. You were looking at the intersection of Fairview Road and I guess Sweeten Creek, right? Were you required, or did you all look at all the intersection between Sweeten Creek and Hendersonville Road? It's kind of the quarter mile up. I understand the approach you're talking about. And then you get once you get past that, right? If folks understand, then you're hitting the through Biltmore Village where that hits Hendersonville Road and also gets backed up. Was there any analysis done on that?
And I'm going to defer to Chris on all the questions on the traffic impact analysis. He was day to day with that.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Chris Day with Civil Design Concepts. The intersections, there was approximately 7 intersections that were evaluated. It did not go all the way up to Hendersonville Road. It included the signalized intersection that Derek made reference at London Road and Sweeten Creek, as well as up at Stoner, all the way over at River Mills. The project and the traffic study included both the district traffic study that was done recently and the River Mills apartments over off of Thompson Street. So there was primarily in that area and did not expand out to the Hendersonville Road. That scope was reviewed by both the city and NCDOT and proposed to be acceptable.
Got it. And this may be a question. I'm sorry, Jerry. I'm sort of jumping between folks for Jessica over here. In terms of what this is currently commercial industrial. So this is currently this is an industrial zoning right now.
Correct.
And then as it relates in our new comp plan, this area is what is this? What is the idea for this?
It's the town center designation, and that kind of spreads all throughout this vicinity.
Okay. And does that extend further down Sweet Creek Road as well, or is that kind of in Biltmore Village? Or do you recall?
It covers Biltmore Village, and it's all the sites on either side. And I don't recall exactly how south it goes.
Okay.
But it's over to Sweeten Creek and all of that.
Okay.
And actually, Jessica, while you're still there, so in looking at the comp plan and the images that we have about what we want town centers to look like,
sure.
They, in fact, the image that I'm looking at has, some buildings and a bunch of surface parking. That we want less of that, and we want more of, higher density. There's not a parking lot to be seen. Presumably, parking is underneath or internal or. So we want more of that. And Derek, I hear you saying that you maybe couldn't put structures in the places where the parking is, but I guess my question to anybody is, I guess to Jessica, it's, how do you see this project as getting us toward that vision of what we want in a town center? And then I realize this is a single site and it may be small, but could you go up? Could could there be, if you couldn't put buildings immediately on the ground there, could you build a multi-story building over that area that has parking and expand the footprint of the building, perhaps make it a mixed-use kind of building?
A number of questions there. I think theoretically, yes, you probably could fill out the bulk of the site with building and structured parking. That could be a potential development scenario someone would come in with. As far as the idea of the reason staff is supportive of saying that this aligns with the town center concept is kind of gets to what Mr. Allen was saying, and is that we can only evaluate each site as it comes. And the town center land use category is looking for a lot. It's looking for a lot, and we know that you're not going to get all of that on one 3.7 acre piece of property. So the use and the development that was proposed hits a number of those elements of the town center, in that the use is considered appropriate. The lodging use as well as the restaurant use, those are both anticipated in this vicinity, in this category. The addition of the transit shelter, the sidewalk connections, those are all elements that the town center is looking for. The fact that a smaller building is as close to the street as it can get, that kind of knits itself a little bit better into Fairview Road and having the taller portion of the building to the rear. Sure, we'd love to see all structured parking, but this, as far as this and the requirements of the district, by not having the parking in front of the building, that hits one of the notes as well. So it wasn't out of line with the town center or the lodging expansion zoning district requirements.
Just got a flip question to Julie's question. I mean, we just heard earlier today, not in this meeting, but a prior meeting, we were talking about the community and economic development. We were talking about jobs. We were talking about the need to have, one of the questions I was asking was, what's one of the biggest impediments we're having in terms of jobs and recruiting, manufacturing, and all that. And what we heard was that there's not industrial land to put it in, right? And in a previous, several years ago, we had the same issue at the intersection of Sweet Creek and Mills Gap Road, where you had a commercial spot, and that land was turned into apartments. And so I guess my question here is, as this is going in a different direction than where Julie was going with it, but I understand that road. I drive that every day. I know it really well, right? I mean, that's an interesting little piece of property tucked away over there. But it doesn't seem to me to be that out of character to see that where that is being able to be used for some type of industrial. So I'm interested in staff's perspective on that as well.
In the 2025 plan, which I know is no longer the current plan, there was a strategy, or there's a goal that was specifically stated that said industrially zoned land should be reserved for industrial purposes. And in my time here, we had a number of application after application that came forward for residential projects that didn't necessarily even meet all of the city's goals, but they have been approved, and now they have changed the zoning, and those apartments or those other uses are a part of our community now. So that exact policy to preserve industrial land is not explicitly stated in this category of the Living Asheville comp plan. We went with the categories. This is the town center. It doesn't speak to industrial uses for this area as far as our
and we had several of them come forward, and I think the way we really handled it was kind of on a case-by-case basis. But if it was zoned industrial, we did do the pause button and had staff tell us whether there was any viable use for it anymore for some industrial purpose. I mean, obviously it's a different day today, there's different uses of land, but trying to make sure we at least walk through that process before we're rezoning anything that is industrial, because to go the other direction, is so difficult.
Yep, but the town center category really isn't looking for industrial uses in this location.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Yes. Please state your name and you'll have 3 minutes, and Maggie will set the timer for you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Benjamin Mitchell. I'm here on behalf of an adjacent property owner this evening, and wanted to express our wholehearted support for this project. I'm not too good with the doc cam, but Ms. Bernstein showed an exhibit earlier that gave us an idea of the adjacent parcels, and my company is property manager for one within 50 yards of this site. It's also a brownfield site, and over the course of the last year or year and a half, we've shown this site to maybe a dozen or more potential tenants or so forth and so on, and folks just aren't ready to go over there because there isn't a catalyst for foot traffic or otherwise in that part of the village. So we would think that the hotel would help drive that demand for our later investing additional capital there in the vicinity, building whether another restaurant or office space or what have you. It seems to me that here, this particular use makes a nice transfer from the neighboring historic use, gradually going from the retail office to a hotel, the district apartment that we've already mentioned tonight. Then we have the agreement that was just approved earlier this evening with Burial Brewing within probably another 400 yards, easy walking distance from this use. For those of you who are familiar with the village, it's sort of shield-shaped, and on this portion of the village, there seems to be a lack of a lodging use within 600 or 800 yards. A lot of terrain change there as well makes it difficult for folks who come to visit us. And I believe that's all.
Thank you. Is there any, yes.
Mayor, members of City Council, my name is Carl Kuhn, and I'm the owner of property at 4 Fairview Road, immediately adjacent to this proposed project. I'm also the one who will be most impacted, as we would share a common driveway. I'm uniquely familiar with the subject property, its history and development. As you may be aware, it's a brownfield site, has floodplain issues, and is also identified by the City of Asheville with an Opportunity Zone designation. This designation means that the area is underutilized for development and in need of economic stimulus. It will take a strong developer with the necessary economic backing to develop this site. I am a realist and know that with the location's proximity to Biltmore Village, it should be upgraded to its highest and best use and contribute to the city's tax base. I also realize that this project will likely cause the relocation of my current business operation as the area redevelops itself. That said, I have no financial interest in this project. I'm in favor of this project. I'll also ask that you approve this project to begin revitalizing this area of Biltmore Village. I would also like to offer one additional piece of information for your consideration. You could easily contribute to the city's coffers by enforcing the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit at this site on Fairview Road. It's only a matter of time before one of my trucks or myself are involved in an accident caused by speeding vehicles flying down Fairview Road. This merits your review. Thank you.
Yes. Yep.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I had not planned to speak, but by this area, my name is Dee Williams, by the way, by this area being designated an opportunity zone, it simply means that there are low-income people. It qualified because of the existence of low-income people who live in that area. So my interest is in low-income people benefiting from it. And so far, I haven't heard. I heard that there were going to be jobs that were living wage, but the way that opportunity is born in my mind and the way this country works is in ownership and not so much in employment. The other thing is that it may be the highest and best use, but once you downzone something, we know how that works, as we do with South Charlotte Street and Martin Luther King Drive. Hotels, we've got a boom of hotels here. I know we talk about opportunities as far as an opportunity zone is concerned, but I'd like to hear some more discussion about whether other opportunities can be brought for the fact that these investors are going to get capital gains abatement. And I know that. I don't think the legislation has been finished writing yet, but I'd like to be able to sit down as someone, along with other low-income people, to talk about what we're going to get out of it. And certainly, we have a group of people over here who are begging for a 60% AMI here tonight to try to make sure that people who are lower income are afforded affordable housing. So I'm interested to talk with these developers, and I want lawyers just like this the next time I get in trouble too. They're great. But I want to talk to them about what they're going to do for us. So even if you give them a conditional and you consider it, in the final end, unless we're prepared to go forward as a community in terms of us benefiting, those of us who qualify these zones because we are low income, we need to have some more pertinent conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, hold on. We don't get to clap at City Council. Sorry. I saw some. Yep, back there.
Thanks for the opportunity. Didn't plan on speaking either, like Ms. Williams, but like Mr. Kapoor, I'm a resident of the South Side. I drive this area all the time, and Ashley Edwards, South Side resident. I don't think the traffic concerns can be understated here, and I believe that we should take into consideration the lights more towards the most popular tourist destination in North Carolina, and take those into consideration. The traffic already backs up to the area where they're talking about putting this project, and so with the pedestrian traffic concerns in the area, some of the businesses that they approached that were mentioned here tonight, the Hillman, Catawba, there are no walkable areas to get to those places from this site, and so that also would, something that would need to be improved. So I support, some development in this area because it does not match the other side of Biltmore Village, but I live in a similar area where Ms. Williams does, and I, think that should be something that's brought into the mix here is how to bring the neighborhood up around where these developments are going, especially on that side. So I'd like you to consider the traffic as well. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Questions, comments, or a motion?
So I'll kind of kick things off if folks don't mind. I mean, I understand the issue about the hotels, and we've been having these discussions. I think as folks know, I look at these as on a case-by-case basis. I've been in the minority with denying hotels. I've spoken in support of hotels when it looked like the vote was going the other way, and so I really do look at these on a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to be supportive of this. I've got a couple of concerns that really can't be addressed. I mean, one is the issue of traffic, and I appreciate the fact that the traffic study was done on the roads off of from Fairview and London, and I get all that. The crucial problem down in Biltmore Village is not that. It's the intersection with Sweeten Creek and Hendersonville Road, and that's the problem. That's where you're sitting through 4 or 5 cycles of lights. You have an issue with that intersection because folks are going straight into using that to go to the Biltmore House, right by the McDonald's, and that area always backs up, and it's a complete mess starting at 3 o'clock. So I understand, again, the analysis that was done. I don't necessarily disagree with that analysis on those particular areas, but the big problem, as I see it in the traffic, is really in the intersection with Hendersonville Road. The other big thing that I see here is that in the Biltmore Village area, both in terms of in there and just along Hendersonville Road in that Biltmore Village, we already have 7 hotels. There's the Doubletree, there's the Baymont, there's the Clarion Inn, there's the Grand Bohemian, there's the Hampton Inn, there's the Holiday Inn, and there's another one being built off of Thompson Street. So we've got 7 going in there already. There will be 7 already, 1 under construction. And in terms of thinking about kind of the diversity of what we have in the various parts of the city. Just as when I was opposed to the Airport Road hotel that was eventually passed, where there were, I think, 9 or 10 within a very close proximity, I feel the same way about this. So, I mean, I appreciate the time, the effort that's gone into this. I think there are positive aspects to what's being proposed here, but I'm not going to be in support of this.
Okay, do I have any other comments, questions, or motion?
I guess I'll just say I'm, like VJ, I think I've made it clear that I look at these on a case-by-case basis as well. And, while this, again, I agree there are a number of good aspects to this project, I still don't know the answer to the question of how we get the development we want if we don't start asking for it. And this does not, in my mind, look like what a town center should look like. And I realize it's one parcel, but I guess what I would say to people who are looking to develop in our city in places like town centers is if you don't have enough land to do the kinds of things that we're looking at doing, you need to figure that out. I mean, if Mr. Kuhn is already recognizing that his business is going to need to leave, then maybe that's an opportunity for a bigger parcel, a bigger project, something that looks more like what we said that we want in this area in town centers. So I will also not be supporting this for that reason.
I would add to that, though. I mean, I don't know what happened in this situation, but often when I've talked to applicants, the planning staff works with the applicant to select the underlying zoning because of what we've done with hotels in the city is we require each one of them to come to us as a CZ, so they have to sit there and kind of make our ordinance fit zoning-wise. So I think your comment's probably more directed at staff when they're helping an applicant select an underlying zoning classification. Maybe we need to have a conversation about that at PED more, just in terms of how those are viewed. But that's my guess. I'm just guessing what might have happened here. Any other questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll make a motion if there's no other comments. I move to recommend denial of the conditional zoning request for RB Hotel at 62 Fairview Road from commercial industrial to lodging expansion district conditional zone. And find that the denial was reasonable and in the public interest because the proposal is not consistent with the city's comprehensive plan for the following reasons. 1, the development does not comply with lot frontage standards. 2, the district and land use category anticipates an active streetscape for the pedestrian with buildings up to the road, but the proposed building is set back 100 feet from the street. And 3, while the lodging use may generally be appropriate per the future land use category of the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, there have already been multiple hotels recently approved in the general vicinity, and the comprehensive plan encourages a diversity of uses built in a compact urban street grid.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to deny. So all those in favor would be agreeing with the motion to deny. Okay, just so we're clear. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
6 to 1.
Okay. We have one more item on the public hearings agenda, and I need a motion to continue it until January 22nd, item D.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have two items of unfinished business. The first is an update on outcomes of the feasibility study to create affordable mixed-income communities on 3 city-owned or city-controlled properties.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for taking the time to review this item tonight. My name is Stephanie Munson-Dahl. I'm the Interim Assistant Planning and Urban Design Director. I am part of a team that's here tonight to provide you with an update on the city-owned property redevelopment for affordable housing. And while we are not requesting any action from you tonight, we are coming to make sure you know of our continued work, our next steps, and that we intend to come back to you in January with additional information. As a reminder, the charge that you asked staff to do was to evaluate 3 sites that were in town and of significant size enough to see if we could use some of our affordable housing bond money. That would be $15 million of the $25 million to develop affordable housing mixed income communities. And generally the answer is yes. Actually, positively the answer is yes. We can redevelop all 3 of these sites as mixed income affordable communities, but each one of them has its own opportunities, and it means that the timing that we use to redevelop them and the scope of work that you would need to look at is going to be different for each one. So I'm going to go over some findings for the sites real quick. For Riverside Drive, you did hear earlier that the site is already planned for in the Riverside Drive development plan, and we've furthered some work with the community to look at doing affordable artist live workspaces on that site. It's not a good traditional affordable housing site because of its lack of access to certain factors, which you'll hear about later. But it is something that can strengthen the community. South Charlotte Street is it's a very important site. It provides a significant opportunity for the city to plan with the community and help sustainably grow an area that was extraordinarily negatively impacted by urban renewal. It also has city facilities on it right now, so it is not ready for redevelopment. Biltmore Avenue, however, is the most ready for redevelopment right now. It is a site that is vacant, and it provides a solid opportunity for us to look at a diverse option of affordability mixes and complement the Lee Walker Heights development that is happening just west of it. So what you're going to hear about tonight is that affordable housing is complicated and that it's going to require you to take some dedicated steps and the creation of partnerships and also the dedication of funding in order to get this done. So most significantly, we ran some pro formas. You'll see some information about that when I bring up Bob Beagle, one of our teammates who's an external consultant. You'll see that from $60,000 to $80,000 of subsidy per unit is not unreasonable. And I know that what we have been talking about as a city for quite a while is more like a $20,000 to $30,000 investment. This does not mean that this funding all needs to come from the city by any means. That is why we are stressing partnerships here tonight. We do want to make sure that you hear that information. So regarding next steps, I'm going to go over these fairly quickly, and at the end we can go into more detail about what they mean. But we are suggesting that we continue right away with the pursuit of development for 319 Biltmore, the Matthews Ford site, because it is vacant. We would come back to you in January with an implementation plan, and the appropriate next steps look like releasing requests for qualifications and getting some developers lined up to redevelop that site. We also plan to release an RFQ to do a study on all the facilities that are currently on that South Charlotte Street site and a few that are actually surrounding it. That will give us the information that we need to know about what will it take to relocate facilities, not in a haphazard manner, but in a sustainable, well thought out, well planned manner that's in alignment with council strategic goals. We also need to do a lot of community development in that area and not only plan for some safety and pedestrian issues. Charlotte Street, as you know, is pretty much wide open right now. It's a 5-lane highway that runs right next to a residential community. So we'd be looking to partner with folks like NCDOT and others. to see what we could do to make that more livable and walkable. For Riverside Drive, we're looking at negotiating a memorandum of understanding. I mentioned that earlier tonight as part of the art space presentation. That again does not tie you to working with any specific developer, but it allows you to receive a proposal from someone who's highly qualified and has done similar developments before. Now I'm going to ask Bob Beagle to come up. Bob is with Lord X Sargent. He is our prime project manager for our external consultants on this. He will walk through the process and the more detailed information behind these findings, and will all be available for questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Again, my name is Bob Beagle with Lord X Sargent. I am part of a team. We do have several sub-consultants, and several of my partners are here in the crowd. So depending on your questions, we may bring other people up who can get into the weeds or not, as the case may be. Thanks for your patience and the long agenda. The good news is we're almost at the end.
This is nothing.
My part will only be about 90 minutes, I promise. No, I'm kidding, of course. There is a lot of information that we have looked at. Many of you have participated throughout the process. A lot of this stuff is way down in the weeds of some economic pro formas in some great detail. I am merely going to give the highlights, so I'm happy to come back to any questions as I can. Our process that we've been going through basically since late February is a 3-phase process. The first phase was really about getting baseline information, so we did neighborhood and site tours, a lot of stakeholder interviews, a lot of focus groups. We did market research, we did infrastructure research, and we sort of looked at the sites and in particular in their context I'll talk about in just a minute. Our second phase is where we really modeled some potential development scenarios. So I'm going to show you what that looks like both physically and economically. And I want to emphasize there's other studies that we aren't the consultants on, but that have been going on by your staff, in particular with geotechnical work, environmental analyses, and of course your staff has been interacting with a variety of stakeholders along the way. And I do want to say your staff has been absolutely fantastic. You should be proud. They are way involved in this process, so that I don't always get to say that in some of the places we work. So we're real happy with that. And then finally, phase 3 is really is starting where we are now. We're starting to roll it out and really start to think about implementation. And we're really almost done with this part of the process. Other way. So a couple points of emphasis that I think are super important that really have evolved as part of this project. And I've been saying this over and over, and I just want to make sure we're being super clear on this. While we're really looking in some deep dives about the suitability of affordable housing on these sites and what can be done, we want to make sure we're not losing sight of the broader community development opportunities here. This just isn't just about maximizing the amount of density we can get or maximizing the amount of affordability we can get. It's also about how are we doing projects, or could projects be done to really improve communities. So we're being mindful of the context, not just the site, but what's around it. We looked at where the connectivity options can be. We're thinking about walkability, bus routes and transits. All of these sites we looked at from a sort of mixed use and mixed income perspective, so it wasn't just about housing. And we started to think about how you might incorporate open spaces. We're not saying this is exactly how you would do it, but we built the models in a way that accommodated that, so we weren't just maximizing it. And Stephanie really hit that already on the community partners piece. So just a couple super quick highlights on the phase 1. As I mentioned, we looked at a lot of different pieces in terms of the broader context. We looked at land use, transportation, transit, bike networks. We had our civil engineers look at infrastructure. We had our economics partner look at the market context of what the market and demographics were. And then we did these individual site assessments. This is just one of many diagrams that we did on all 3 of the sites. So we looked very specifically at what their strengths were, both from a development standpoint, but also from a community standpoint, what their weaknesses were, what the opportunities were, so that when we built our models, we were building up to something greater. And that really led us to this comparison matrix as a means of summary. It's sort of a 2-pager, so bear with me for a minute. We really looked at a lot of different factors. This is sort of meant to sort of summarize the ability of these sites to accomplish many things. So we looked at how would a developer look at it, development readiness, which of these sites were going to be most attractive to private developers, the configurations of the sites, their size and capacity to be able to deliver affordable housing, Their market potential, I mentioned mixed use, so understanding, do they actually have a market for non-residential uses? We looked at a lot of location factors, so for instance, are these sites within a mile walk of education and retail services, banks, healthcare, food services, important components like that, parks and open space, walkability, floodplain, a lot of different aspects. And what we really came to decide was, and Stephanie hit on it, that Biltmore and South Charlotte Street are much more ready for development in a traditional affordable housing sense. Riverside has some great opportunity, but isn't a way to maximize affordability in the traditional way. And I think this art space presentation you all heard earlier tonight is really exciting because it's sort of a non-traditional way, different way to think about it, and a way to sort of a different kind of private sector approach to getting affordability. These scenarios, a couple quick caveats. Again, I want to emphasize that we built these scenarios, the physical and the economics. We're not trying to say this is what has to happen or what will happen. These are just models of what could happen. We've tried to be extremely realistic, economically conservative. We looked very closely at the limitations. We're looking at very realistic construction typologies, so we're not pie in the sky. We're being mindful of market reality so that these analyses and models are built in some reality. Isn't to say there couldn't be improvements on this. You might get some developers that can do better, other things. This is just a way for us to model something that we think makes sense. So super quickly, these two sites, Biltmore site, about 300, we think about 310 units. This is, say, 4 to 6 story stick-built kind of construction with parking decks behind. About 12,000 square feet of commercial space. And the big important piece about Biltmore, of course, is the Lee Walker Heights redevelopment, which I think you're all very well aware of, and this is the opportunity to stitch those together, so connecting them both physically and socially so that Biltmore Avenue to this site, to Lee Walker, becomes a continuum. And that's sort of what that could look like, again, physically in a very realistic way, in a way a developer might approach this. South Charlotte Street is a much bigger site. We think we could get about 550 or so units on there, about 32,000 square feet of retail in a bunch of different places. It's big enough that you would probably phase this if you were a developer. No developer is likely to come in and build 550 units all in one phase. It's probably going to be in multiple phases. And I think that's what Stephanie hit on. The real big opportunity here is how do we restitch this back together with East End. Charlotte Street's a big river right now that separates and divides, and if this project is going to go forward and be successful, that character of South Charlotte Street is going to really have to be thought of in terms of how do you make it more pedestrian and friendly and have stoops and storefronts and make it, once again, a community street instead of a highway. And again, this is sort of what that could look like. The economic pro formas, this is not my specialty. I'm going to hit it. I do have Gary in the audience who can come up and answer questions as we need, but I'm just going to hit some of the super quick highlights and then we'll be done. Again, model of what we think could be. We're not trying to create a prescription of this is exactly how much affordable housing we need to have. We're not creating policy here. The models, the economic models, were for Biltmore Avenue and really the phase 1 of South Charlotte Street as a first start. Again, trying to be very realistic. We used local construction cost factors and rent factors so that we were being specific to Asheville and these sites, not mythical. We looked at a lot of different income and affordability levels, so this gets very complex very quick, as I think some of you saw who were peeking in on this. There's things about the quantity of affordable housing that we're getting, but then there's also, well, what income level? So there's a lot of trade-offs, and I want to emphasize that this really incredible spreadsheet tool that Gary built, and I know some of you have seen behind the scenes of that, is really going to be a great tool for you all going forward. You own that when we're done, and hopefully Gary can train your staff on how to start pushing and pulling, because there's a lot of different levers you can push and pull to really analyze this. So again, a lot of numbers here. I'm not going to go through all these. I thought I'd just pick one scenario as an example so you can see the kinds of things we looked at. Again, we're not recommending this as a policy. We're just looking at scenarios to get a sense of what you can do. So one of the early scenarios we looked at was 60% of the units being affordable, so that's scenario A, so 20% being in that around 60% AMI range, and another 40% at the 80% range, and then 40% market. And when you do that, you can get about 183 of the 310 units. 61 of those get to be down in that 60% range. And the really thing I want you to zero in on is this per affordable unit gap. So what we're really doing in these models is we're calculating what is that gap. If a private developer came in and was required or asked to put in a level of this affordability like this scenario, what would their private developer hat-on gap be that something has to be filled with?
And what is the assumption about the underlying land cost in that when you have that gap?
They're two different. So Biltmore Avenue, the assumption is that you have to pay for the land. You have a current option with
Right,
Duke
because we have an
Energy.
option on
That
that.
number is in the model.
Okay.
So if you get that for free, from some magical reason in Duke's
yes.
Infinite whatever,
Yes.
that would improve the model.
That would be magical.
South Charlotte Street has the opposite. There's no land cost built into the model, but there's a land recovery built in. So that's assumed as economics that you could, assuming you could, when you put this out for private redevelopment, a private developer would pay you for that land. However, of course, there you have the added burden, so you're getting revenue out of it, but you have facilities and things on the site that you're going to have to deal with. So there's costs there. So we didn't build the costs into it. We just built it's sort of considered cost neutral. So the model works as if you're going to sell.
You might get something for it, but you're going to have to reinvest it. It may be a wash.
Most likely.
It may be a wash.
It may be a wash. That's a great way to look at it. And we just don't know the cost. You heard Stephanie mention that.
Okay.
That idea of studying that in more detail to be known. So that's just one of those scenarios that gets you at about a $60,000 per unit. If you bump it up to 75% of the units being affordable, that's our scenario C. You get up to $70,000 per unit in Biltmore, and actually over 80 when you look at that South Charlotte Street. South Charlotte Street has a higher infrastructure cost. You have Town Branch underneath that has to be dealt with, and some other things. So there's some additional costs there. Yes, ma'am.
So it doesn't. So that's my question about the per unit subsidy required on South Charlotte is higher, even though we have to purchase the land on Biltmore.
Correct.
And you're saying that's because of the.
You have additional infrastructure costs.
Yeah.
Just as a base because of Town Branch and some other factors. You also, in the case of Biltmore, because of Lee Walker Heights, that center road is being built and carried in their pro forma.
So some infrastructure is already there.
So some of that infrastructure is being provided for you.
And then the cost to relocate the public works facilities is not embedded in this, I assume.
It's not.
So that'll be whatever that is,
Right.
to
So
purchase
you-
property and relocate
You
those
get land
facilities.
revenue that you can contribute toward that, but that's the importance of the study
Gotcha.
Stephanie mentioned of trying to figure that out. So those are, again, some super high-level pieces. Just quick highlights, again, of just where we are and who we've talked to. We have had a lot of interaction with a lot of different stakeholders along the way. These are just some of the recent ones. We've made 2 different presentations in some depth, in particular to your Housing and Community Development Committee with a lot of questions. We had a public open house a month ago, had about 80, 90 people, something like that. That was pretty interesting. We've had a lot of different stakeholder interviews, and I know a couple of you participated, or at least one of you did, on Friday, just last week, of looking at in the details of the model. I won't put anyone on the spot to try to explain it. And of course, your Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, we've met with a few times, and your staff has been updating along the way. And again, these are just repeats of the major findings. So with that, I will ask Stephanie to come up, and we're here to answer questions.
Thank you. And you all also helped tour the mayors from across North Carolina when they visited our city and tell them about some of this work you all are doing. I really appreciate you
bet.
doing
That
that.
was fun.
They were very impressed.
It was cold, but it's fun.
It was cold, yes.
Thank you. Just those last 2 slides here, just to reiterate what our next steps are, and I can answer any questions about these. We also have folks here that would be managing the facilities assessment. Our real estate manager is here, affordable housing specialist is here, our urban planner who's helping us with the community engagement and communication plan is here, so ready.
Steph, tell us tonight what you need us to do, if you need us to take any formal action, or if this is just a preview of for January.
We do not need you to take any formal action. It is a preview for us coming back in January, and we need you to understand that we're continuing to work. So we are continuing to work on an RFQ for the facilities assessment, and we're continuing to work on an RFQ for the Biltmore Avenue site. And then we're also talking with potential development partners for 91 Riverside Drive in that interim.
I mean, I think this is, you know, monumental to say the least. So I think it deserves several hearings before we even take any action. So I appreciate that, and I know in the subcommittees there's more happening. So thanks to you all on all your
Thank you
work.
very much.
All right. Okay, our final item tonight is a resolution authorizing the mayor, me, to execute a loan modification with EMP Commercial LLC. And there's actually, Maggie's written in here, a second piece of this, a budget amendment that will require a motion. Kathy Ball is going to present this item to us.
And I believe the resolution is actually to authorize the city manager.
Okay, it doesn't authorize me.
I know.
Authorizes the manager. No, I thought I had one.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council, the item I come before you tonight with is the request to approve the terms of a loan and repayment plan to the Eagle Market Street Development Corporation. A little bit of background on this project. In 2013, the City Council approved a Section 108 loan to the Eagle Market Street Development Corporation for the purpose of providing commercial and retail space on what is known as the block. The total amount of the loan was $718,000. $268,000 of that loan was dispersed in 2017. The terms of the loan were not recorded for the remaining $450,000 disbursement. In other words, there wasn't specific loan repayment terms or terms surrounding how that money would be used. The reason we're coming forward to you tonight is that Eagle Market Street Development Corporation, which has recently combined to become the Eagle Market Place Commercial LLC, is requesting the final disbursement of those funds. The initial request from the group was for that to be awarded in terms of a grant, modified from a loan. What staff is coming to you with is recommendations that go back to looking at the minutes from the 2013 meeting and trying to determine what the spirit and intent was around those terms and the repayment plan. So based on the review of that, we're coming forward to you tonight to say these are the terms for your consideration. That would be job creation, which was one of the fundamental reasons for the loan, and 21 jobs within 5 years. That equates to about 1 job per $35,000 loaned. A lower than market rate rent, which would between 0 and 5 years be an average of 20% below market rate. From year 6 to 20, the average would be 15% below that rate. And the reason for getting us to 20 years is that's when we would start receiving loan payments for this money. The good faith efforts would be made to rent to historically underutilized businesses or minority-owned businesses, which again was another item which was the spirit and intent of the 2013 minutes that we reviewed. And that upfit, upfit to the space be completed in 2 years of the final payment. Additionally, we wanted to be able to say we wanted to have an annual review to be able to determine that the terms of the loan were being met by the group, and that it would include a default clause that said if the terms were not met, then the loan would come due. So the requested action before you tonight is authorizing the city manager to disperse the remaining funds under the terms and repayment plan proposed by the staff that you have at your seat. and to approve a budget amendment in the amount of $450,000. I'm available, we have the attorneys here, other folks available to answer any questions you might have.
And I think it would also bring the original 268 under these same terms. Is that right? It would amend the loan agreement to bring the original 268,000 that were dispersed into these same terms, so that the entire loan would be under these same terms that have been recommended.
That is correct. Bullet number 5 in your packet under background says that the promissory note was signed only for the $268,000, so that we're recommending that these terms be applied to the full $718,000.
So I don't have any questions, but there's a, on attachment A, the last bullet under default, there's either an incomplete sentence or just, there's something wrong there. City staff will review should the project fail to meet any of the above terms. So maybe that says the city staff will review compliance annually.
That is an error on my part. Please strike, city staff will review that. It should say, should the project fail to meet.
Okay.
We're learning how to use Google Docs, and it doesn't always come out the way we intend for it to.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, I guess I'm curious to know whether Eagle Market Street or MHO folks who are here if they're good with this as well. I don't know if we want to hear from them or someone can represent that position for us.
Council members. I'm Stephanie Swepson-Twitty, CEO for Eagle Market Streets Development Corporation. Thank you for your time and consideration on this matter. Yes, we are very amenable to the terms as they have been laid out. We thank you for the arduous time that you have put into this matter and into this project. We thank you again for your consideration on this.
I just had a question or two for staff or whomever.
Fire, who will know?
Under the recommended terms, is there any consideration to change from 0 to 5 years to 25 and 6 to 20 to 15%? And then the good faith effort to rent to historically underutilized businesses, is there any reason why that says underutilized, historically underutilized businesses as opposed to African American or minority?
Legally, there's a reason. We can't say minority, but we can use the money for historically underutilized businesses.
Thank you. That was almost a rhetorical question in some sense to specify for those folks who would be looking at this and wondering. Also, the other question, which would be the 0 to 5 years averaged for 20% below market rate, is there any consideration to change that to 25%? And the 6 to 20 year average to 20%.
Wait, Keith, where are you?
He's looking at the PowerPoint.
It's right there.
Right there, the
sorry.
0 to 5 to, say it again, not 20%, but.
25% and 20%.
So 25 and 20 instead of 20 and 15.
Based on the spirit and intent of the loan back in 2013, I think we're all familiar with the area called the Block or Eagle Market Street, considering back in the 1950s and 1970s when urban renewal, I'm not giving a history lesson, but just stating that when urban renewal came through and totally flattened the East End Valley Street neighborhood and all the economic businesses that were there, thus creating Charlotte Street and cutting off that neighborhood to the Block and its customer base, so to speak, for economic development. I think it's interesting tonight when we talk about all these places. We talk about the Biltmore project and the Charlotte Street project. It's one of those things where urban renewal happened. You have like some of those folks in that East End Valley Street neighborhood who were actually homeowners who were pushed out to venture into subsidized public housing. The first in the city, which was Lee Walker Heights, which we're now redeveloping, and we're wanting to do more housing projects over there on Biltmore, and of course South Charlotte Street. So I'm not giving a history lesson, but I just want to put it in context, the spirit and intent to revive this area, especially for minority-owned business.
So, Maggie, that timer is about to go. Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Young, I think we had a long conversation with the folks from Eagle Market Street Development Corporation as well as MHO, and we tried to get the rents as low as we could. We understand that since the 2013, the cost of the infrastructure was significantly higher, so there were some implications on their side as far as what they were having to pay to get that space upfitted and get it ready to go. We tried to find a point where we could incentivize minority-owned businesses and hopefully provide lower rates for that initial period of time. You all are welcome, of course, to talk to the developer, but we felt like this did give an opportunity for a window of 0 to 5 years.
I just going off track here, but if the interest, of course, is to get the rents down as low as possible, and I know that this is time sensitive, and you guys really scrambled to work on this before the snowstorm. We welcome you to town and asked you to work on this and deal with the snowstorm. But I wonder if there's an opportunity for the city to partner with Eagle Market Street to try to work on the rent issue. I mean, it seems like it may be able to be lower. Who knows? I don't know, but it may require some subsidy to make that happen. And is that potential out there? I don't know if I'm hitting that right.
I think. I mean, that's some of it, but I think we need to keep in context the spirit and intent is more than just about the rents. It's about what this area was, because it is no more, and what it represented. And when you look at like Triangle Park over there and you look at the murals on the wall, that's just ghost of what this area used to be. And the spirit and intent of this project itself was to revitalize the area, and to not hold true to that in any sense. I think if you don't go out of your way to make this project as successful as possible with anything else that goes on in that area, including what happens with South Charlotte Street, I think in itself destroys the fabric of what this area was, helps destroy that if that doesn't happen. If you don't see minority business here, if you don't see historically underutilized businesses there, if you don't see this place kind of spring up from the ashes and reconnect with the East End community and the South Charlotte Street project, if you don't see those things happening and you don't put every effort forward to make that happen, then you're just contributing to what already is.
Thank you, sir. And I think that you and I are in agreement. We may be in some debate around how we reached the same conclusion. And I would say that if we want to be the change that we want to see, we have to be profitable to do that. And so in order for us to be profitable, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And therefore, we could not conceivably have those rates be at 25% and still give you what you need. In order for us to meet our debt service and provide the kind of prudent business model that we should be providing, we need to keep the terms commiserate with what we have provided here this evening. I would ask you to please be conscious of that, as well as the things that you have stated already. Thank you.
Before you leave, Stephanie,
Yes.
I would concur with what Keith is saying, because it seems like the spirit and intent of this project at this point is more about getting it done than getting it right. And I think initially it was about getting it right and restoring the very fabric of this community back. So my question to you is, with the market rents as they are presented here, 20% below market rate, I want to know what your marketing and recruitment plan would be.
What it's always been, which is my target audience has always been to recruit healthy, utilized
meaning certainly African-American businesses. Let's just call it like we see it. And so I have done everything in my power, and currently 75 to 90% or 80% of all those businesses that will come into the project are African-American businesses. We only have one business right now that we are pursuing, or that is we're negotiating with, that is a business of non-color. And I think that those businesses that we have sought out are more than capable of meeting our rates. Again, I ask you to be very cautious of the fact that in order for us to be able to meet the debt service on the project and to pay you as you rightfully need to be paid, that we keep the rates in a way that would be able to do that. That is all I'm asking of you. So thank you again.
Any other questions?
Oh, just, not you, Stephanie.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Given the fact that we committed to the total $718,000 back when?
2013.
Why wasn't it budgeted? Why are we?
Good question. The money was
Thanks,
a
Kathy.
part of Section 108. In January of 2017, staff came before you and requested to pay off that loan because we were continuing to pay interest. The original Section 108 money was borrowed in 2004 for the intent of redoing something on the block because there was an initial project that failed to move through. So the city had continued to pay interest on that Section 108 loan for a number of years, and we felt like it was in the city's best interest. And in fact, we could save around $83,000 in interest payments if we went ahead and paid it sooner. So that loan was paid off, and then the intent was to use funding from the CIP to make this loan once they were ready to and ask for the money.
But so what you're basically saying is when we paid off the loan, we didn't reserve for the CIP. We should have reserved it, probably.
Correct.
When we paid off the loan. Okay.
But we do have, don't we have money in our CIP every year for affordable housing?
We have approximately, I think this was in the report, we have
Should have reserved it.
about $2.6 million right now. And, we would just add that, and anytime we're looking at a project, we would be looking to create an affordable mixed-use, mixed-income project. So we're recommending that the money come from that CIP funds, which is available.
Right.
The budget amendment is to transfer it into this project.
Right, so that 2.6 is not already dedicated to specific places.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that's definitely one of the questions that I asked.
Any other questions?
I just have one thing. I wanted to thank Sabrina and Peter here for helping kind of figure out exactly what might have happened. Obviously the city did commit to put $718,000, and I think what we saw in our role as oversight here as kind of a new council is some concerns about how all the legal, how this was essentially structured or not structured. And so I thank the attorneys here for kind of finding of this. I think we all here on the dais want this project to succeed. I think, and I think Ms. Twitty as well. I think the points you're making here about being profitable and about being able to make it work are understandable. And I think that we as a council, to the extent there are questions going forward, to the extent there are, you will see what the market will bear. When the time moves forward with it. So, I'm going to be supportive of this. I think this was for probably Ms. Campbell as well, kind of a bit of an eye opener here, to make sure that the complicated projects that we have kind of going forward are structured in a way that there's no questions going forward, that are analyzed, and that we make sure that we're treating everybody the same way, and that we're making sure that we've got good oversight to whatever terms that we've agreed to are being enforced, whether it's this type of project, an economic development project, whatever it is. That's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to, for
It's
the.
not we have to have a motion first because it's not a public hearing.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
okay. Motion to approve the loan modification and the budget amendment.
Is that satisfactory? Maggie doesn't like it.
Okay, so.
So the loan modification
The loan
first.
modification.
Well, I think Maggie's saying two motions.
Okay,
So
so.
let's do the loan
Loan
modification first.
modification
I'm saying
and
loan
to.
modification and disbursement.
And disperse the balance of the 718,000.
Yeah. Sabrina's like, why do I draft these suggested motions?
Well, except there isn't a
Because,
suggested
well,
motion.
I don't know.
There's not exactly.
That's fine.
What?
So you're saying to authorize the city manager to modify the terms of the loan as set forth in Exhibits A and B to the resolution and as have been presented?
Exactly.
And disperse the remaining funds to EMP Commercial LLC and EMSDC for commercial and retail space.
Gwen so moves.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anyone wishing to comment on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then the
And now
second, yeah.
I
the
move
budget
to approve the budget amendment in the amount of $450,000.
Do I need a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there anyone wishing to comment on this motion? No? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? I would just add at the end of this, I see lots of folks with Mountain Housing and Eagle Market Street down here. This project originated before anybody was on council,
Was
except for
alive.
you or
Yeah.
you, well,
You and I
long before we were around
Oh,
this,
yeah.
there were many origins of what's now there. But I did, one of my first recollections of this was Terry Bellamy, when she was mayor, convened a meeting. And I was there and she asked the county to be there. I know David Gant was there and she invited Mountain Housing to be there. And she said, I want you guys to do this project. And you did, and you agreed to do it. And it has been probably your hardest project ever, right? Yes. But I think that I am impressed. I think it came out well, and and it has such a history. The block has such a history that it has been years and years, and different people have tried to do things, and it hasn't materialized. So I don't have any ownership over this, but I am thankful that you all did it, and I'm sorry that it was so challenging and that there were so many bumps. But I think that it's important for the city to continue to have a strong relationship with Mountain Housing because we're going to do more. And we do need you as a community partner in our city. So thank you, and thank you for coming down here for your millionth city council meeting. So, all right. That is the end of our printed agenda. And now we have public comment. I have two people signed up to speak. The first is April Brown, but the note says burial, so that must have been the beer thing. The second is Sarah Skinner. Sarah, yes. I don't think it's that.
I'm Sarah Skinner. I wanted to make comments about the South Charlotte and Biltmore plans that were presented today. I'm sorry everybody left before I got to say this, but I'm interested in more diverse and equitable and truly affordable housing in Asheville. I've been coming to City Council and affordable housing related meetings as a community member to help educate myself about this issue. I'm happy to see an uptick in what seems to be an emphasis on affordable housing, and that's very exciting to me. I'm also encouraged by the creative discussions I hear at AHAC. Members are having discussions interfacing with community members, city staff, realtors, bankers, who all seem interested in making more affordable housing for people who really need it. One concern I have in general is the 80 AMI target for affordable housing, so I was glad to hear tonight that some of these plans include 60 AMI. I have some questions though. Do we really know what the income levels of the people that need the housing are? Are we building for these people? I have also noticed that proposals seem to be 1 and 2 bedroom places, which leave out families with multiple children. What do studies tell us about the size of living situations that individuals and families in Asheville really need right now? I do appreciate strides being made and would ask that in this new South Charlotte and Biltmore, in the plans that people are working on, that we actually go lower to 50 AMI if possible and include voucher housing as well. That would truly create mixed community plans, and that has so much promise. So I was glad to hear Councilman Young talk about the history, because I think that's one reason I'm here. I'm new to Asheville, but I have heard the history, and I think we need diverse, equitable, affordable housing in Asheville. And one way to do that would be to start with these 800 units and really make it possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? All of the housing that the city invests in is required to take vouchers. We require that, so.
And we're gonna hear more about these projects in January. We're gonna hear more details on the 3 sites that we've asked staff to look into. I mean, I think the people should start to have a conversation about the subsidies that you saw in those pro formas. Construction is incredibly expensive, and even when we own the property, the subsidy level for per unit, per affordable unit, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And you know, our benchmark subsidy, we try to make it $20,000, but clearly we're not even close to talking about that. So I mean, this is really something that has to be part of a community conversation, because it is a serious financial subsidy to create each unit of affordable housing, which is a priority of our community, and voters voted for $25 million in affordable housing bonds to help support this effort. But I always say you can't buy yourself out of an affordable housing crisis, and I think you can see why with these numbers. But it is an important way for the city to be able to preserve land located in the heart of our city in perpetuity for people to be able to use at affordable rates. Otherwise, we know what will happen. It will just be redeveloped all at market rate, and it will gentrify, and that'll be the end of the story. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? I don't have anyone else signed up, but yep.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to issue my support for Sarah Skinner. That's the reason why I was here today. I've been working on affordable housing off and on for a long time here in the city, and one of the most successful forays into it has been Eastview with the Housing Authority, where you have folks from public housing who own a condominium, and it will be owned in perpetuity by them. The other thing is that there are subsidies that can come in the form of social enterprise for retail space. There are a lot of us who know how to do stuff. I think when we come to these meetings, we see where a lot of things have already been done. And so I urge council to sort of start talking to people from grassroots up and not so much staff top down. I do revere your staff for their knowledge base and all of that, but we the people have some learned experiences and also some just some experience in general. The block, I heard that. I've had 2 nightclubs up there when I was a younger person, and of course a great history with the block. Very concerned about the way things are going. I know that there's been a lot. I would have liked to seen a lot more pro formas. I'm always interested to see how the numbers really stack up. I hear a lot of stuff, hear a lot of noise, but the numbers sort of solidify things for me. I don't know how a lot of people feel, but it looks like a lot of people who look like me are being pushed out. And when I see a room full of developers and they're telling you about opportunity zones, and the only reason why an area is designated an opportunity zone is because of an economic demographic that looks like me. So I would urge you also to bring folks in from the community so they can have some opportunity, because it gets to be mighty discouraging here, especially when those of us who live in these city limits, like I do in Kenilworth, have to pay upwards of $3,000 a year in property taxes plus the car. So just keep us in mind, and also we may have differences of opinion, but hopefully we can be civil and we can do some good work for folks in our community. And thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Heath. Yeah, Jonathan. I need a scissors.
My name's Jonathan Wainscott. I'd like to welcome Deborah Campbell to Asheville. I got to meet her a couple weeks ago. I just want to continue to clarify the narrative of the racial gerrymandering with the district elections and all this kind of stuff. One of the things that I found that has been diluted in the conversation is the success of Ms. Smith in Joel Burgess's article back in July. He had mentioned that you did very well in the 6 most populated African American precincts, which is true. You did very well there, but you did well everywhere in the city. Even in District 3, which is the North District, it had a 1.8% African American voter participation in 2017. There were 83 African American voters who cast a ballot in District 3, which at one time had 4 representatives on council: the mayor, vice mayor, Mark Hunt, and Cecil Bothwell. But in that district, you came in 3rd place, like you did in at least 3rd in every district in Asheville. You came in 357 votes above white guy Rich Lee, who took 4th place, and so you crushed it everywhere. So this narrative that, you barely made it onto council by a highly energized African American vote just is simply not true. And it's a shame to see that story of success being sold short for some sort of perceived vulnerability that you can't do well in a white population here in Asheville, because you absolutely crushed it. And I just wanted to give you that big congratulations. You took more votes in your 2nd place finish than Keith did with his 1st, and Brian did with his 2nd, and you beat the vice mayor who came in 1st place before that. I mean, you just really, you did a really fantastic job, and it wasn't because of a strong African American vote, it was because of a strong Shanika Smith and an electorate that is not resistant and hostile to diversity on our council. And this council, with Northeast, Southwest all represented here, is a situation that we need to preserve, and I would just implore you again to reconsider your position on the electoral structure. Greenville, South Carolina has district elections. I know that's South Carolina. They've only got 60,000 people. They've got 2 African American women sitting on their council. So Asheville's not the only progressive place in the Southeast. Again, welcome to Asheville. Thank you.
I hear Mr. Wainscott. I would say that you did do well. You did crush it. But Shanika and I sitting here is an anomaly. That hadn't happened in 25 years, and when it did happen, it wasn't because 2 people were elected successively like that. So let's hope that it, should we have districts or not have districts, let's hope that the anomaly doesn't happen every 25 years. So 25 years ago, you and I wouldn't be here, but we're here today. Hopefully it won't be 25 years later before there are other African Americans that serve together on council.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, we do not have a closed session. Our next meeting is, when is it, Maggie?
January 8th.
January 8th. So happy, hope you had a happy Hanukkah, and you'll have a Merry Christmas. Coming up, happy holidays.